Hannah Cole stood frozen in her classroom, staring at the television screen mounted in the teacher's lounge. The man on the news, the one announcing a $50 million education initiative, was wearing the same gentle smile he'd given her over coffee just 3 days ago. Lucas Gray, the modest man who'd fixed her fence, who'd brought secondhand books to her students, who'd never once mentioned the word CEO. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering across the linoleum floor. Everything she thought she knew about him was a lie. Or was it? Want to know how a literature teacher fell for a hidden millionaire? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning the streets of Riverside into rivers of reflected neon and headlights. Hannah Cole sat in the corner booth of Maple Street Cafe, her fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She checked her phone for the 4th time. No messages, no calls. Just the same screensaver photo of her classroom bookshelf staring back at her. "He's not coming," she muttered to herself, feeling the familiar sting of disappointment settle somewhere between her ribs and her pride. The cafe was nearly empty. Just an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie near the window, and a college student hunched over a laptop, headphones blocking out the world. The barista, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair, caught Hannah's eye and offered a sympathetic smile. Hannah had been coming here long enough that the staff recognized the look of someone who'd been stood up. She should leave. That's what any reasonable person would do. But something kept her planted in that booth. Maybe the same stubborn hope that had convinced her to say yes to this blind date in the first place. Her best friend Rachel had set the whole thing up. "You need to get back out there," Rachel had insisted, practically forcing Hannah's phone into her hand to confirm the date. "It's been 2 years since David." 2 years, Hannah. You can't spend the rest of your life hiding behind lesson plans and book reports. Hannah had wanted to argue, to explain that she wasn't hiding, she was healing. There was a difference. But Rachel had that look in her eyes, the one that said she wouldn't take no for an answer, so Hannah had agreed. 1 date, 1 cafe, 1 hour of her life. What was the worst that could happen? The door chimed, sending a gust of cold air and rain into the warm cafe. Hannah looked up and her breath caught. The man who walked in was nothing like she'd expected. He wasn't polished or put together. His coat was worn at the elbows, a dark gray that had probably been black years ago. His jeans were clean but faded, and his shoes, old work boots, left wet prints on the hardwood floor. He had dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, damp from the rain, and eyes that seemed to take in everything without rushing to judgment. He spotted her immediately, as if he'd known exactly where to look, and something flickered across his face, relief maybe, or recognition. He approached her table with measured steps, not confident but not uncertain either. "Hannah?" His voice was low, quieter than she'd expected. "I'm Lucas. Lucas Gray. I'm so sorry I'm late. The bus broke down on 5th Avenue and I had to walk the last 6 blocks. Hannah blinked. The bus. When was the last time she'd met someone who took public transportation by choice? In her limited dating experience since David, most men showed up in cars they couldn't quite afford, wearing watches they'd probably bought on credit, talking about jobs that sounded more impressive than they actually were. "It's okay," she heard herself say, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I was starting to think you weren't coming." Lucas slid into the booth, shrugging out of his wet coat and draping it over the back of the seat. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the kind that came from smiling or squinting into sunlight. He looked tired, but not in a defeated way. More like someone who'd worked a long day and still had the energy to show up. "I wouldn't do that," he said simply. "If I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there, even if I have to walk through a monsoon." The corner of Hannah's mouth lifted. "Is that what this is? A monsoon?" In Seattle, maybe this would be a drizzle. But here in Riverside, this is definitely a monsoon. He smiled, and it reached his eyes, creating little creases that made him look younger and older at the same time. The barista appeared at their table, her purple hair slightly damp from having stepped outside for a smoke break. "What can I get you?" Lucas glanced at Hannah's cold coffee. "What are you drinking?" "Just a regular coffee, black." He turned to the barista. "I'll have the same." And could we get 2 slices of whatever pie you recommend? Apple crumb is fresh out of the oven. Perfect. When the barista left, Hannah studied the man across from her. He didn't fidget or check his phone. He didn't look around the cafe or seem uncomfortable with the silence that settled between them. He just sat there, present in a way that felt both unusual and comforting. So, Hannah said, folding her hands on the table, Rachel told me you work in education. What do you do exactly? Lucas's expression shifted slightly, something guarded crossing his features before settling back into openness. I work in education support, funding, resources, that kind of thing. It's not very exciting. I'm a literature teacher at Riverside High, Hannah offered, so I probably have a different definition of exciting than most people. What do you teach? American literature mostly, some creative writing electives. I've been there for 5 years now. Do you like it? The question was simple, but the way he asked it, like he genuinely wanted to know, like her answer mattered, made Hannah pause. When was the last time someone had asked her that? Not whether she had a good day or how work was going, but whether she actually liked what she did with her life. I love it, she said, and felt the truth of it settle in her chest. I love watching students discover a book that changes how they see the world. I love the moment when someone who hates reading finds the one story that makes them a reader. It's like being present for a small miracle every time it happens. Lucas leaned forward slightly, his attention focused entirely on her. That's not a small thing. That's everything. Something in his tone made Hannah's throat tighten. He wasn't flattering her or trying to score points. He meant it. The barista returned with their coffee and pie, setting the plates down with a practiced efficiency. Steam rose from the apple crumb, filling the air with cinnamon and sweetness. They ate in comfortable silence for a few moments, the kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled with meaningless small talk. Outside, the rain continued its steady assault on the streets, but inside the cafe, everything felt warm and safe. Can I ask you something? Lucas said, setting down his fork. Why did you agree to this? The blind date, I mean. Hannah's first instinct was to deflect, to give some easy answer about wanting to get out more or making her friend happy. But something about Lucas's directness invited honesty. Because I'm tired of being afraid, she said quietly. I was engaged 2 years ago, to someone I thought I knew. Turned out I didn't know him at all. He was not who I thought he was. And when I found out, when everything fell apart, I decided I was done. Done with dating, done with trusting people, done with all of it. What changed? Rachel wore me down, Hannah admitted with a small laugh, and I realized I was letting one bad experience define the rest of my life. I didn't want to be that person anymore. The person who's so afraid of getting hurt again that she never takes a chance on anything good. Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face with an intensity that should have felt invasive but somehow didn't. I understand that, he said finally. Being afraid of the wrong things for the right reasons. What are you afraid of? The question slipped out before Hannah could stop it. Too personal for a first date. Too intimate for strangers sharing pie in a cafe. But Lucas didn't flinch. I'm afraid of people seeing me as something I'm not. Of being valued for the wrong reasons. Of never knowing if someone actually cares about me or just about what they think I can give them. The honesty in his words hit Hannah like a physical thing. This wasn't first date small talk. This was real, raw in a way that made her feel both exposed and safe at the same time. I get that, she said softly. After David, my ex, I kept wondering if anything about us had been real, if he'd ever actually loved me or if I'd just been convenient. A placeholder until something better came along. His loss, Lucas said, and there was no charm in it, no attempt to flirt or impress, just a simple statement of fact. They finished their pie and talked about easier things, books they'd loved, places they wanted to travel, childhood memories that still made them laugh. Hannah found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, the conversation flowing naturally from one topic to another without the forced quality of two people trying too hard to find common ground. When the cafe's lights flickered, the owner's subtle way of signaling closing time, Hannah was shocked to realize 3 hours had passed. 3 hours that had felt like 30 minutes. I should let you get home, Lucas said, reaching for his coat. The rain's letting up. Outside, the streets were slick and dark, puddles reflecting the streetlights like scattered stars. Hannah pulled her jacket tighter against the October chill. Can I walk you to your car? Lucas asked. I only live 4 blocks from here. I walked. Then let me walk you home. Something in Hannah wanted to say no, to maintain her independence, to prove she didn't need protecting. But another part of her, the part that had enjoyed the last 3 hours more than she wanted to admit, simply nodded. They walked in silence for the first block, their footsteps echoing off the wet pavement. The neighborhood was quiet, most people already tucked inside for the night, lights glowing warm behind curtained windows. This is a good neighborhood, Lucas observed. Safe. Feels like a community. It is, Hannah agreed. I moved here after the engagement ended. Needed a fresh start somewhere that didn't remind me of him. Every morning, Mrs. Patterson from the corner house brings me tomatoes from her garden. The bookstore owner, Mr. Chen, saves first editions for me. It's the kind of place where people still know each other's names. That's rare these days. Do you live nearby? Lucas hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. I'm across town. Different kind of neighborhood, but it works for me. They turned onto Hannah's street, and she felt a strange reluctance for the evening to end. This man, this quiet, unassuming man in his worn coat and work boots, had somehow managed to make her feel seen in a way she'd forgotten was possible. This is me, she said, stopping in front of a small brick house with a porch light that needed replacing. The house wasn't much, but it was hers, a modest 2-bedroom with a yard that desperately needed work and a fence that leaned slightly to the left. Lucas looked at the house with the same quiet attention he'd given everything else that evening. It suits you, he said. Warm, real. Hannah felt her cheeks flush, grateful for the darkness. Thank you for tonight, she said, and for walking me home. Thank you for giving me a chance, Lucas replied. I know blind dates are a gamble. This one paid off. Something passed between them in the silence that followed. Not attraction exactly, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. 2 people who'd been hurt seeing the possibility of something different in each other. Can I see you again? Lucas asked. No pressure, no expectations, just coffee or pie or both. Hannah found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like forever. I'd like that. Next Saturday? Same place? Same place. Lucas took a step back, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Good night, Hannah. Good night, Lucas. She watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller until he turned the corner and disappeared from view. Only then did she climb her porch steps, unlock her door, and step inside her quiet house. Her phone buzzed immediately. Rachel. Well? How was it? Tell me everything. Hannah sat on her couch, still wearing her jacket, and typed out a reply. It was good, really good. We're meeting again next week. 3 dots appeared. Then, I knew it. I knew you 2 would hit it off. What's he like? Hannah thought about Lucas's worn coat and gentle smile, his quiet intensity and careful honesty. Different, she typed. He's different from anyone I've ever met. And it was true. David had been all flash and charm, grand gestures and bigger promises. He'd swept into her life like a storm, and she'd mistaken that intensity for passion, that chaos for excitement. When it all fell apart, when she discovered the debts he'd hidden, the lies he'd told, the other women he'd kept secret, she'd felt like a fool for not seeing through the performance. Lucas was nothing like that. Lucas was quiet where David had been loud, steady where David had been erratic, present where David had always been chasing something else, someone else, somewhere else. The next week passed in a strange blur of anticipation and normalcy. Hannah taught her classes, graded papers, attended a faculty meeting that lasted 2 hours too long. But underneath it all, she found herself thinking about Saturday, about seeing Lucas again. She told herself not to get her hopes up. One good date didn't mean anything. People could be kind and interesting for a few hours, then disappear. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. But when Saturday came, Lucas was already at their booth when she arrived, 2 coffees and 2 slices of cherry pie waiting on the table. You remembered, Hannah said, sliding into her seat. Cherry's your favorite, Lucas said simply. You mentioned it last week. Such a small thing, but it hit Hannah hard. David had never remembered her favorite anything, not in 3 years together. They fell into conversation as easily as they had the first time, talking about books and students and the small frustrations of daily life. Lucas told her about a funding project that had fallen through, his voice tight with disappointment but not defeat. Hannah shared the story of a student who'd written a poem that made her cry, the good kind of tears that came from witnessing someone discover their own voice. As the weeks passed, their Saturday meetings became a ritual. Same cafe, same booth, same easy conversation that somehow never felt repetitive or stale. Hannah found herself looking forward to those few hours all week, counting down the days like a teenager with a crush. But Lucas never pushed for more. He never suggested dinner at a fancier restaurant, or invited her to his place, or tried to turn their coffee dates into something more complicated. He seemed content to meet her where she was, to take things at whatever pace she needed. It was both reassuring and frustrating. One evening in November, Hannah was in her kitchen trying to fix the dripping faucet when she heard a knock at her door. She opened it to find Lucas standing on her porch, a toolbox in one hand. "Your fence is leaning," he said by way of greeting. "I noticed it last time I walked you home. Thought I could fix it if you don't mind." Hannah blinked. "You came all the way across town to fix my fence?" "I was in the neighborhood," Lucas said, which Hannah suspected was probably not true. "Won't take long. Hour, maybe 2. She should have said no. Should have told him it was too much, too presumptuous, too something. But instead, she found herself nodding, stepping aside to let him through to her backyard. She watched from the kitchen window as Lucas worked, his movements efficient and practiced. He'd changed out of his usual coat into a worn flannel shirt, and she could see the play of muscles in his shoulders as he hammered and leveled and adjusted. When he finished, the fence stood straight and sturdy, no longer listing to one side like a ship taking on water. "How much do I owe you?" Hannah asked as he packed up his tools. Lucas looked almost offended. "Nothing. I wanted to help." "Lucas, you can't just—" "Yes, I can," he said firmly. "Friends help each other. That's how this works." Friends. The word should have been comforting, but instead it left Hannah feeling oddly deflated. Was that all this was to him? Friendship? As if reading her mind, Lucas stepped closer, his dark eyes searching her face. "Hannah, I'm going slowly because I don't want to mess this up. Not because I don't care. If anything, I care too much." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means I've spent the last 2 months looking forward to Saturdays more than anything else in my life. It means when I'm at work, I'm thinking about what story I want to tell you next. It means I fixed your fence because I can't stand the thought of you worrying about something I could easily handle." He paused, his voice dropping lower. "It means I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me because I don't want to be just another person who disappoints you." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not David." "I know, but I also know you've been hurt, and I'd rather take this slowly and build something real than rush in and risk losing you before we've even really started." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. They were rough with calluses, working hands that didn't match his vague description of office work and education support, but she didn't question it. Everyone had their secrets, their private corners they weren't ready to share. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being patient, for being you." Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." December brought cold winds and early darkness, the kind of winter that settled into your bones and made you crave fireplaces and hot chocolate. Hannah's students were restless with approaching winter break, their attention wandering from literature to thoughts of holidays and freedom. One afternoon, as she was erasing the whiteboard after her last class, there was a knock at her classroom door. She turned to find Lucas standing in the doorway, his arms full of boxes. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised and pleased to see him on a Wednesday instead of their usual Saturday. "Donations," he said, setting the boxes on her desk. "Books for your classroom library. I know you mentioned wanting to expand it, give the kids more options." Hannah opened the nearest box and gasped. Inside were dozens of books, new releases, classics, young adult fiction, poetry collections. Some still had their price tags attached, showing figures that made her dizzy. Lucas, this is too much. These must have cost a fortune. He shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. I know people. Got them at a discount. And education is important. Kids should have access to books that matter. She wanted to argue, to insist he return them, but the thought of her students' faces when they saw these books stopped her. So instead, she walked around the desk and hugged him, feeling him stiffen with surprise before his arms came around her. Thank you, she murmured against his shoulder. This means everything. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the empty classroom as winter light faded through the windows. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah thought Lucas might kiss her, saw the intention flicker across his face. But instead, he just brushed a strand of hair from her eyes and smiled. I should let you get home, he said softly. Stay, Hannah heard herself say. Help me sort these books. We can order pizza. Lucas's smile widened. Okay. They spent the evening organizing the books by genre and reading level, arguing good-naturedly about whether certain titles belonged in fiction or literary fiction, whether dystopian novels should be shelved with science fiction or stand alone. Lucas had read almost everything in the boxes, could quote passages from memory, discuss themes with the kind of depth that suggested he'd studied literature formally. Where did you go to college? Hannah asked, passing him a stack of poetry collections. Lucas's hand stilled for just a moment. East Coast, a small school you probably haven't heard of. The evasion was gentle but unmistakable, and Hannah felt a flicker of unease. Everyone had things they didn't want to talk about on a first date or a 10th date. But they'd been seeing each other for 3 months now, and she still knew almost nothing concrete about his life outside their Saturday meetings and these occasional surprise visits. She didn't push. Not yet. The pizza arrived, and they ate cross-legged on her classroom floor surrounded by books and cardboard boxes, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas told her about a student essay contest he was helping to fund, his face animated with genuine excitement. Hannah shared her frustration with the new standardized testing requirements, how they were sucking the joy out of learning. You really love this, Lucas observed, watching her with those dark, attentive eyes. Teaching, you light up when you talk about your students. It's the only thing that feels real sometimes, Hannah admitted. Like I'm actually making a difference, even if it's small. It's not small, Lucas said firmly. You're giving kids the tools to understand themselves and the world. That's the foundation of everything. When they finally left the school, it was nearly 10 o'clock. Lucas walked Hannah to her car, his hand finding hers in the darkness. Same time Saturday? He asked. Actually, Hannah said, gathering her courage, would you want to do something different? Maybe dinner? Somewhere that's not the cafe? She saw surprise cross his face, followed by something that looked like conflict. I'd love to, but I can't this Saturday. Work thing. I'm sorry. Disappointment settled in Hannah's stomach, sharp and unexpected. It's okay. Rain check? Definitely. He squeezed her hand. Next Saturday, for sure. But next Saturday came and went with a text apologizing, another work commitment he couldn't avoid. The Saturday after that, he showed up at the cafe looking exhausted, apologizing for being late, for being distracted. Hannah tried not to let it bother her. Everyone had busy periods at work. Everyone had responsibilities that took precedence sometimes. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas was pulling away, retreating behind the same careful walls he'd started to lower. Christmas approached with its usual chaos of concerts and grade deadlines and holiday parties. Hannah felt obligated to attend. She invited Lucas to her school's Christmas party, held in the decorated gymnasium with punch that tasted like disappointment and cookies from the grocery store. I can't, he said, his voice strained. I'm sorry, Hannah. Work is crazy right now. It's always crazy, she said before she could stop herself. You're always busy, always somewhere else. Lucas looked pained. I know. I'm sorry. After the new year, things will calm down. I promise. But she'd heard promises before. David had been full of them. Promises to change, to be better, to finally tell her the truth. And every single one had been a lie. Hannah spent Christmas Eve alone in her small house, grading papers and trying not to think about Lucas or where he was or who he was with. Her phone stayed silent except for texts from Rachel asking if she wanted to come over, if she was okay, if she needed anything. "I'm fine," Hannah typed back, lying to her best friend and herself. On Christmas morning, there was a package on her porch. Inside was a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, her favorite book, the one she taught every year without ever growing tired of it. The inscription inside read, "For Hannah, who teaches others to see the mockingbird, always Lucas." She held the book with shaking hands and cried, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift and the growing certainty that she was falling in love with a man who was keeping secrets from her. The new year came with resolutions and fresh starts and students returning from break with stories to tell. Hannah threw herself into teaching with renewed focus, trying not to count the days between seeing Lucas, trying not to notice when he showed up at the cafe looking distressed, his phone buzzing constantly with calls he didn't answer. "Is everything okay?" she finally asked one Saturday in mid-January, unable to ignore his obvious stress any longer. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him before. "Just work, nothing for you to worry about." "But I do worry," Hannah said softly. "That's kind of what happens when you care about someone." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw exhaustion in something else, fear maybe, or regret. "I know, and I'm sorry for being so distant lately. There are just things happening that I can't really talk about right now." "Can't or won't?" The question hung between them like a challenge. "Both," Lucas admitted. "Hannah, there are parts of my life that are complicated, that I'm not ready to share yet. But that doesn't change how I feel about you." "How do you feel about me?" The question came out smaller than she'd intended, more vulnerable. Lucas reached across the table, taking both her hands in his. "I feel like you're the first real thing that's happened to me in years. Like when I'm with you, I can breathe in a way I can't anywhere else. Like I want to tell you everything and protect you from everything at the same time, and I know those things are contradictory, but that's where I am." Hannah wanted to push, to demand answers, to insist he trust her the way she was learning to trust him, but she could see the genuine distress in his eyes, the conflict between what he wanted to do and what he felt he could do. "Okay," she said finally. "But Lucas, whatever it is you're not telling me, it's going to come out eventually. And when it does, I'd rather hear it from you than find out some other way." He nodded, his expression grim. "I know. I just need a little more time." Time. Hannah had given David time, and it had cost her everything. But this was Lucas, not David. Lucas who fixed her fence and brought books to her students and remembered that cherry pie was her favorite. Lucas who looked at her like she was something precious and rare. She decided to give him the time he needed, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings she tried hard not to hear. February brought freezing rain and flu season, half her students out sick and the other half coughing through class. Hannah came down with it herself, spending a miserable weekend in bed with fever and chills, too sick to even read. On Sunday evening, she heard a knock at her door. She dragged herself out of bed, expecting Rachel with soup, and instead found Lucas standing on her porch with bags from the pharmacy and the grocery store. "You're sick," he said, not waiting for an invitation before coming inside. "Rachel told me." "You shouldn't be here," Hannah croaked, her voice hoarse. "You'll catch it." "Don't care." Lucas started unpacking. Medicine, soup, juice, tissues, the kind of care package that showed he'd actually thought about what a sick person might need. "When's the last time you ate?" "I don't remember." He disappeared into her kitchen, and she heard cabinet doors opening, pots clanging, water running. 20 minutes later, he appeared with a bowl of chicken soup, made from scratch with vegetables he'd brought and chicken he'd somehow produced from her sparse kitchen. "How did you—" "I'm a decent cook," he said, helping her sit up on the couch, arranging pillows behind her. "Now eat. You need to keep your strength up." Hannah wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of dignity, but the soup smelled incredible, and she was too weak to fight. So she ate while Lucas tidied her living room, washed the dishes piling up in her sink, and generally moved through her space with a competence that suggested he'd done this before. Cared for someone who was sick. When she finished eating, he took the bowl and returned with medicine and water. "You don't have to stay," Hannah said, though she desperately wanted him to. "I know." Lucas sat on the edge of the couch, his hand cool against her fever-warm forehead. But I'm going to anyway. He stayed all evening, reading aloud from one of her books when she was too tired to focus on the television, bringing her water and medicine when her fever spiked, never once complaining or acting like he'd rather be anywhere else. Somewhere around midnight, Hannah drifted into a restless sleep, and when she woke in the early morning hours, disoriented and tangled in blankets, Lucas was still there, asleep in the armchair across from the couch, his long frame folded uncomfortably in a space too small for him. Something in Hannah's chest cracked open at the sight. This man, who kept so many secrets, who held so much of himself back, had stayed, had taken care of her without expecting anything in return. She fell back asleep thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong to doubt him. By Monday, Hannah felt well enough to return to school, though she kept a box of tissues on her desk and dismissed class 5 minutes early, too exhausted to make it through the full period. Lucas texted her that evening. Feeling better? Yes. Thank you for yesterday. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. That's what people do when they care about each other. Hannah stared at her phone, at those simple words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Have dinner with me this weekend." "My place, let me thank you properly." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. "I'd love that." Saturday evening, Hannah cooked for the first time in months, making lasagna from a recipe her grandmother had taught her years ago. She cleaned her house, put fresh flowers in a vase, changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple sweater that Rachel insisted made her eyes look striking. Lucas arrived exactly on time, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous in a way she'd never seen him before. "You didn't have to bring anything," Hannah said, taking the wine. "My mother raised me better than to show up empty-handed." They ate at her small kitchen table, conversation flowing easily despite the new intimacy of the setting. Lucas complimented her cooking with genuine appreciation, asked about her students, told her about a literacy program he was trying to get funded. After dinner, they moved to the living room with the wine, sitting close together on the couch, close enough that Hannah could feel the warmth of him, smell the clean scent of his soap. "Lucas," she said softly, setting down her wine glass. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why me?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could be with anyone. Someone more exciting, more accomplished, more..." She struggled to find the words. "More something, but you keep showing up here, keep spending time with a small-town literature teacher who lives in a house with a fence that leans and a porch light that flickers. Why?" Lucas set down his own glass, turning to face her fully. The look in his eyes was intense, almost fierce. "Because you're real," he said. "Because when you talk about your students, you light up like they're the most important thing in the world. Because you read poetry for pleasure, and you cry at beautiful writing, and you believe that stories matter, that they can change lives. Because you've been hurt, and you're still brave enough to try again. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to be anyone except exactly who I am." He reached up, cupping her face gently. "I've spent so much of my life being what other people needed me to be, meeting expectations, playing roles. With you, I can just be. Do you know how rare that is? How precious?" Hannah felt tears sliding down her cheeks, though she couldn't have said exactly why she was crying. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "When I'm with you, I'm not the woman whose engagement fell apart, not the teacher who has to be strong for her students, not the friend who needs to be fixed. I'm just Hannah, and that's enough." "It's more than enough," Lucas said, his thumb brushing away her tears. "It's everything." When he kissed her, it was gentle and careful, and full of all the things they'd been holding back for months. Hannah kissed him back, her hands finding their way into his hair, feeling him pull her closer until there was no space left between them. They stayed on that couch for hours, kissing and talking and kissing some more, the kind of evening that felt suspended outside of time, perfect and fragile and real. When Lucas finally left, sometime after 2 in the morning, Hannah stood on her porch watching his figure disappear into the darkness, her lips still tingling, her heart fuller than it had been in years. She went to bed happy, thinking that maybe this was it. Maybe this was the beginning of something that could last. Maybe all the caution and slow progress had been worth it. She had no way of knowing that in less than a week, everything would change. The following Tuesday afternoon, Hannah was shelving books in her classroom library when her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Turn on Channel 7, now." Hannah frowned at the cryptic message but pulled up the news app on her phone. The live feed showed a conference room packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. At the center of it all stood a man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair neatly styled, his posture confident and commanding as he addressed the crowd. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering against the tile floor. It was Lucas. But it wasn't Lucas. Not the Lucas she knew anyway. This man looked like him, had the same dark eyes and the same shape to his mouth. But everything else was different. The worn coat and faded jeans had been replaced by a suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. The quiet, unassuming manner had been replaced by the easy authority of someone used to commanding a room. Hannah's hand shook as she picked up her phone, turning up the volume. The Gray Education Foundation is committing $50 million over the next 5 years to public school literacy programs across the state, the man who looked like Lucas was saying. "We believe that every child, regardless of zip code or economic circumstance, deserves access to quality education and the resources to succeed." The reporter's voice came through, slightly muffled. "Mr. Gray, this is the largest single donation to public education in state history. What inspired this level of commitment?" Lucas? Because it was him. It was definitely him, even if Hannah's mind was struggling to reconcile the two versions. Smiled, and it was the same gentle smile she'd seen across countless coffee cups at Maple Street Cafe. "Education changed my life," he said simply. "I want to make sure it has the chance to change other lives too. That's what this is about, giving kids opportunities they might not otherwise have." More questions came rapid fire. Hannah heard phrases like self-made millionaire and CEO and youngest philanthropist in the state, but the words seemed to come from very far away, filtered through a roaring in her ears that made it hard to think, hard to breathe. She sat down hard in her desk chair, still staring at the screen. The camera panned across the room and she caught a glimpse of the backdrop behind Lucas, a banner with the Gray Foundation logo, elegant and professional. Not the modest education support work he'd vaguely described. This was corporate. This was money. This was power. This was a lie. No, a voice in her head corrected. Not a lie. An omission. He'd never actually said he wasn't wealthy. He just let her believe it, let her think he was someone he wasn't. Or was she the one who'd made assumptions? The broadcast ended with Lucas thanking the reporters and stepping away from the podium, handlers immediately closing in around him. Hannah sat in her empty classroom as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, trying to make sense of what she'd just seen. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel, of course. "That's Lucas? You're Lucas? The education support guy? Hannah, he's a millionaire, a literal CEO. What the hell?" Hannah's fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't know what to say. What could she say? She'd been dating someone for 4 months without knowing the most basic facts about his life. She'd thought they were building something real, something honest, and all the while he'd been playing a role, pretending to be someone ordinary. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been so afraid of being fooled again after David, so careful to protect herself, and she'd walked right into it anyway. Another text came through, this one from Lucas. "Can we talk, please?" Hannah stared at the message until her eyes blurred. Part of her wanted to type out an angry response, to demand explanations, to tell him exactly how betrayed she felt. But another part, the part that remembered him reading to her while she was sick, fixing her fence without being asked, bringing books to her students, that part wanted to understand. She turned off her phone without responding and finished her workday in a fog, barely remembering the drive home. That evening, Lucas showed up at her door. He changed out of the expensive suit and back into his usual worn jeans and simple shirt, but Hannah couldn't unsee what she'd witnessed on the news. Couldn't unknow what she now knew. "You watched," he said quietly when she opened the door. It wasn't a question. "The whole state watched," Hannah replied, her voice colder than she'd ever used with him. $50 million is a lot of money, Lucas. Or should I call you Mr. Gray now? He flinched. Don't, please. I'm still the same person I was yesterday. Are you? Hannah crossed her arms, staying in the doorway, not inviting him in. Because the person I knew took the bus and wore a coat with holes in the elbows and worked in vague education support. That person doesn't sound anything like the CEO I just saw on television. The coat does have holes in the elbows, Lucas said, attempting a smile that died when he saw her expression. Hannah, can I please come in? Let me explain. She wanted to say no, wanted to close the door and lock him out and protect herself the way she should have from the beginning, but she'd never been good at self-preservation, had never been able to walk away without at least hearing the truth. She stepped aside, letting him pass. They stood in her living room, the same room where they'd kissed just days ago, and the distance between them felt like miles instead of feet. Talk, Hannah said. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, the gesture familiar and painful all at once. I didn't lie to you. You didn't tell me the truth either. That's the same thing. No, it's not. He took a step toward her, then stopped when she stepped back. Hannah, I never lied about what I do. The Gray Foundation does education support, funding, resources, exactly like I said. I just didn't tell you the scale of it, or that I run it. Why? The word came out as almost a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face with something that looked like desperation. Because I wanted you to know me, the real me. Not the money, not the foundation, not the CEO. Just Lucas, the guy who likes books and bad coffee and walking in the rain. But that's not all you are, Hannah said. The money, the foundation, the CEO, that's part of you too. And you kept it from me. For 4 months, you let me believe you were someone you're not. I let you see who I actually am, Lucas countered, his voice rising slightly. The rest is just noise. Expectations and obligations and people wanting things from me because of what I have, not who I am. I'm not people, Hannah said, her own voice sharp now. I'm the woman you've been dating, the woman you kissed on this couch 4 days ago, the woman you said you were falling for, and you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. It's not about trust. Then what is it about? Hannah felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been playing some kind of game, slumming it with the poor teacher who doesn't know any better. Was this fun for you, pretending to be normal, seeing how long you could fool me? Lucas looked like she'd slapped him. How can you think that? After everything, how can you think I'd do that to you? Because I don't know what else to think. Hannah's voice broke. I don't know you, Lucas. I thought I did, but I don't. The man I've been falling for doesn't exist. He was just a character you were playing. That's not true. Lucas moved toward her again, and this time Hannah didn't back away. Everything between us has been real. Every conversation, every moment, every feeling, all of it was real. But based on a lie of omission, Hannah said, you let me make assumptions. You showed up in old clothes and talked about taking the bus and never once corrected me when I clearly thought you were just regular. Someone like me. I am like you, Lucas insisted. The money doesn't change who I am inside. Hannah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Doesn't it? You live in a completely different world than I do, Lucas. You make donations that are larger than I'll earn in my entire lifetime. You run a foundation, have handlers, give press conferences. That's not something you can just separate from who you are. I know it's a lot to process. It's not about processing, Hannah interrupted. It's about trust. It's about honesty. It's about the fact that I told you everything about David, about my fears, about why I was so afraid to open up again, and you held back the one thing that would have helped me understand you. Lucas's shoulders sagged. I was afraid, he admitted quietly. Afraid that if you knew about the money, you'd start seeing me differently, that you'd want something from me or feel intimidated or think I was out of your league. I've had relationships before where the money was all they cared about, where I was just a means to an end. So you lied to protect yourself, Hannah said. And in the process, you became exactly like the person who hurt me. David lied too. He had his reasons too. In the end, it didn't matter why he lied. It only mattered that he did. I'm not David, Lucas said firmly. No, you're worse. The words came out harsh and immediate, and Hannah saw them land like physical blows. David lied about debts and affairs. You lied about your entire life, your identity, who you are in the world. I didn't. Lucas stopped, his jaw clenching. You're right. I should have told you. I wanted to, so many times. Every Saturday at the cafe, every time I walked you home, every moment we spent together. But I kept telling myself it was too soon, that I needed more time, that you needed to know me better first. And when would have been the right time? Hannah asked. After we slept together? After I fell completely in love with you? Or were you just going to keep the secret forever? Let me keep living in ignorance? Lucas's expression shifted at her words, something hopeful flickering across his features. You're falling in love with me? That's what you got from what I just said. Hannah felt her anger surge fresh. That's what matters to you right now? Yes, Lucas said simply. Because if you're falling in love with me, then what we have is real. The money doesn't matter. The foundation doesn't matter. What matters is us and how we feel about each other. How can you not see that those things do matter? Hannah pressed her hands to her temples, feeling a headache building. Your life is completely different from what I thought. You have responsibilities and pressures and a whole existence I know nothing about. How am I supposed to fit into that? How are we supposed to build something real when I don't even know the basic facts about your daily life? You know the important things, Lucas argued. You know I care about education. You know I like books and terrible coffee and spending time with you. You know I'd rather fix fences than hire someone to do it. You know I read to you when you were sick, and I remember that cherry pie is your favorite. Those are the things that matter. But they're not the only things that matter, Hannah said, exhausted suddenly. Lucas, I teach high school. I grade papers and attend faculty meetings and worry about whether I can afford to fix my car when it breaks down. You run a foundation and make $50 million donations and have people who probably schedule your entire day for you. We live in different worlds. So we'll bridge the gap, Lucas said. People from different backgrounds fall in love all the time. People from different backgrounds who are honest with each other from the start, Hannah corrected. We don't have that foundation. Everything we've built has been on sand, and now it's washing away because I can't trust what you've told me. If you lied about this, what else are you lying about? I haven't lied about anything else, Lucas said, his voice tight. I swear to you, Hannah, everything else I've told you is the truth. How am I supposed to know that? Hannah felt the tears finally spill over. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? Lucas looked devastated, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides like he wanted to reach for her but didn't dare. What do you want me to do? Tell me what I can do to fix this. I don't know, Hannah said honestly. I don't know if you can fix it. The silence that fell between them was heavy with everything unsaid, all the words that couldn't make a difference, and all the feelings that were suddenly too complicated to navigate. I think you should go, Hannah finally said. I need time to think, to figure out what I'm feeling and what I want and whether I can get past this. How much time? Lucas asked, his voice rough. I don't know that either. He nodded slowly, accepting her answer even though it clearly hurt. Can I call you? I'd prefer if you didn't. Not yet. Lucas moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Hannah, I know I messed up. I know I should have told you sooner. But please believe me when I say that everything between us has been real. You're the most genuine thing in my life. The money, the foundation, the title, all of that is just noise. You're what matters. Hannah didn't respond, couldn't respond around the lump in her throat. After he left, she sat on her couch and cried, mourning the relationship she thought she'd had and the man she thought she'd known. Outside, the February wind rattled her windows, and somewhere in the distance she heard a dog barking. Normal sounds from a normal night in her normal life. Except nothing felt normal anymore. The next few days passed in a blur of routine and numbness. Hannah taught her classes, graded papers, smiled when expected, and felt nothing. Rachel called repeatedly, texting when Hannah didn't answer, finally showing up at her door on Friday evening with wine and takeout. You can't avoid me forever, Rachel said, pushing past Hannah into the house. And you can't avoid talking about this. There's nothing to talk about, Hannah said, but she took the wine glass Rachel poured for her anyway. Nothing to talk about? Hannah, your boyfriend turned out to be a secret millionaire. That's definitely something to talk about. He's not my boyfriend anymore. Rachel settled onto the couch, her expression shifting from determined to concerned. What happened? After the press conference, I mean. Hannah sank down beside her friend, the whole story spilling out. Lucas showing up at her door, their argument, his explanations that didn't quite explain anything, the way he'd looked when she'd asked him to leave. So he lied to you, Rachel said when Hannah finished. He says he didn't lie, just omitted. Same difference. Rachel took a sip of wine. But Hannah, can I play devil's advocate for a minute? Do I have a choice? Not really. Rachel shifted to face her more fully. I get why you're hurt. I do. But try to see it from his perspective. He's rich, probably has people trying to use him all the time. He meets you and you're real and genuine and you like him for him, not for his money. Why would he want to ruin that? By trusting me, Hannah said. By being honest. Even if being honest meant risking losing you? The question hung in the air. Hannah wanted to say yes. That honesty was always the right choice. That trust was non-negotiable. But she also remembered how carefully she'd guarded her own heart, how long it had taken her to open up to Lucas, how many tests she'd put him through without even realizing it. I told him about David, Hannah said quietly, about being afraid to trust again, and he still didn't tell me. That's what hurts most. He knew how important honesty was to me, and he kept this massive secret anyway. Maybe that's exactly why he didn't tell you, Rachel suggested gently. You'd already been burned by someone who lied about money. Maybe he was afraid you'd assume he was the same. That's not fair to me. No, it's not, Rachel agreed. But fear isn't fair. It makes us do stupid things, make bad choices, protect ourselves at the expense of other people. You know that better than anyone. Hannah did know. She'd been making fear-based choices for 2 years, keeping people at arm's length, testing their loyalty, waiting for them to disappoint her so she could say she'd been right to not trust. I don't know what to do, she admitted. Part of me wants to forgive him, to try to work through this. But another part is just so angry and scared. Scared that this is who he really is, someone who keeps secrets, who doesn't trust me enough to be honest. Or maybe he's someone who made a mistake, Rachel offered. Someone who was trying to protect something good and ended up hurting it instead. That doesn't make it right, but it does make it human. Hannah's phone buzzed. Another text from Lucas, the 10th since Tuesday night. She'd read them all without responding, watching his messages shift from explanatory to apologetic to simply worried. This one read, I miss you. I miss talking to you. I miss knowing you're thinking about me on Saturdays. I know I don't have the right to ask, but please, just let me know you're okay. He's persistent, Rachel observed, reading over Hannah's shoulder. He fixed my fence without being asked and brought books to my students, Hannah said. Persistent is kind of his thing. Those are pretty boyfriend things to do, rich or not. Hannah set down her phone, staring at the blank television screen. Rachel, how do I know this is real? How do I know he actually cares about me and this isn't just some experiment or game? You don't, Rachel said honestly. You can't know for sure. That's what makes relationships scary. You have to trust without guarantees. But Hannah, I saw you with him. I saw how you lit up when you talked about your coffee dates, how happy you were after he took care of you when you were sick. Whatever his bank account looks like, those feelings were real. Feelings aren't enough, Hannah said, not without trust. No, Rachel agreed. But trust can be rebuilt, if both people want it badly enough. The question was whether Hannah wanted it badly enough to do the hard work of rebuilding what had been broken, whether Lucas's mistake was forgivable or whether it was a fundamental flaw that would always be there, a crack in the foundation that would eventually bring everything down. She didn't have an answer. The weekend came and went. Hannah stayed home, avoiding the cafe where she'd spent so many Saturday afternoons with Lucas, avoiding the places in her neighborhood where she might run into him, avoiding everything that reminded her of what she'd lost. On Monday, she returned to school to find another delivery waiting in her classroom. Not books this time, but a letter, handwritten on simple paper and sealed in an envelope with her name on it. Hannah's hand shook as she opened it. Dear Hannah, it began in Lucas's familiar handwriting. I know you asked for space, and I'm trying to respect that. But I need you to understand something. I need you to know the whole truth, not because I think it will fix what I broke, but because you deserve to have all the information. I grew up poor. Not struggling middle class poor, but eating cereal for dinner because that's all we had, poor. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us housed and fed, and even then we were one emergency away from homelessness. Books were my escape. The library was free, and I could lose myself in stories of better lives, bigger worlds. When I was 15, a teacher noticed me reading in the cafeteria during lunch because I couldn't afford to buy food. She started a tutoring program specifically so she could pay me to help other students, which meant I could eat without it being charity. That teacher changed my life. She saw me, really saw me, when I'd spent years feeling invisible. I got a scholarship to college, worked my way through, started a company right out of school that happened to be in the right place at the right time. By the time I was 30, I had more money than I'd ever imagined possible. And suddenly, everyone could see me. But they didn't see me. They saw the money. I got engaged 5 years ago to a woman I thought I loved, thought she loved me. When I sold my first company and temporarily had cash flow problems during the transition, she left. Didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face, just a note on the kitchen counter saying she couldn't handle the uncertainty. 2 months later, when the sale went through and I had more money than ever, she wanted to come back. Said it had all been a misunderstanding. That's when I realized she'd never loved me. She'd loved what I could give her, what I represented. The stability, the lifestyle, the status. And I swore I'd never let that happen again. When I met you, you didn't know who I was. You liked me anyway. The real me, the one who reads poetry and fixes fences and prefers walking in the rain to driving. You saw me the way that teacher saw me all those years ago, as a person worth knowing regardless of external circumstances. I should have told you the truth sooner. You're right about that. But Hannah, I was terrified. Terrified that if you knew about the money, everything would change. That you'd start questioning whether your feelings were real or start treating me differently, or worse, that you'd stay with me for the wrong reasons. I know that's not an excuse. I know I hurt you by keeping this from you, and I know trust is earned, not demanded. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know why. Not to justify what I did, but to help you understand. You asked me once why I chose you. The answer is simple. Because you chose me first, before you knew there was anything to gain. That's more precious to me than any amount of money. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to have the whole story. You deserve that much. Always, Lucas. Hannah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face by the second read. She thought about that teacher who'd seen a hungry boy and found a way to feed him without taking his dignity. She thought about a woman who'd left when the money temporarily disappeared, proving that Lucas's fears weren't paranoid delusions, but learned experiences. She thought about her own reaction to discovering his wealth, the immediate assumption that he'd been playing her, that the relationship had been a game. Had she done exactly what he'd been afraid she'd do? Made the money the most important thing instead of the person? But no, she decided. His fear didn't justify his deception. His past didn't give him the right to make decisions for her, to choose what information she could handle and what she couldn't. Still, the letter complicated things, made Lucas more human, more understandable, more forgivable. Hannah folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her bag. She still didn't know what she wanted, but at least now she understood what she was working with. The following Saturday, she found herself at Maple Street Cafe without consciously deciding to go there. Muscle memory, maybe, or hope. She ordered her usual coffee and cherry pie and sat in their booth, the one they'd claimed as theirs over months of conversations and laughter. Lucas didn't show up. She hadn't expected him to, but part of her had hoped anyway. She was halfway through her pie when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Hannah Cole? The voice was professional, female, vaguely familiar. Yes? This is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I'm working on a follow-up story about the Gray Foundation's donation, and I understand you're romantically involved with Lucas Gray. I was hoping you might be willing to comment. Hannah hung up without responding, her heart pounding. She stared at her phone as if it had betrayed her. It rang again. Different number, same request. Then again. And again. By the time she made it home, she had 7 voicemails from various news outlets and 3 emails from reporters who'd somehow gotten her contact information. Her hand shook as she texted Lucas. "Why are reporters calling me?" His response came immediately. "What? Who?" "Hannah, I didn't tell anyone about you. I've kept our relationship completely private." "Well, someone told them." "I'm going to find out who. I'm so sorry." Hannah turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her house, feeling her private life spiraling into something public and invasive. She'd wanted a quiet life, a simple life. This was neither of those things. The next morning, she woke to find photographers outside her house, actually outside her house, with cameras and questions and an aggressive curiosity that made her feel violated. She called in sick to school, unable to face the drive through that gauntlet. Then she called Lucas. He answered on the first ring. "Hannah, make them go away," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, Lucas, make them go away." "I'm already on it," he said, and she could hear the fury in his voice. "My lawyer is sending cease and desist letters. I'm putting out a statement asking for privacy. Hannah, I'm so sorry. This should never have happened." "How did they find me?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." He paused. "Are you safe? Do you need me to come over?" She wanted to say yes. Wanted him to come fix this the way he'd fixed her fence and her sick days and all the other small problems that had arisen over the months. But this wasn't a small problem, and she couldn't let him solve it for her. "No," she said. "Just handle the press." "I will, I promise." She hung up and peered through her curtains at the reporters still camped on her lawn. This was Lucas's world, invasive, public, constantly scrutinized, and she'd gotten a taste of it after just one news conference. What would her life look like if she actually stayed with him? If their relationship became official, permanent? The thought terrified her. By evening, the reporters had dispersed. Whether because of Lucas's legal threats or simply because they'd gotten bored, Hannah didn't know and didn't care. She just felt grateful to be able to leave her house without being ambushed. She drove to Rachel's apartment without calling ahead, needing her best friend in a way she hadn't in years. Rachel took one look at her face and pulled her inside. "I saw the news," she said. "Someone leaked that Lucas was dating a teacher. They're calling you his mystery girlfriend." "I don't want to be anyone's mystery anything," Hannah said, collapsing onto Rachel's couch. "I just want my normal life back." "Is that really what you want?" Rachel asked gently. "Or is that fear talking?" "Does it matter? Either way, I can't do this. I can't be with someone whose life comes with photographers and press conferences and cease and desist letters. That's not who I am." "Who are you, Hannah?" The question stopped her. Who was she? The scared woman who'd let one bad relationship dictate her future? The careful teacher who played it safe and never took risks? Or someone braver, someone willing to fight for something real even when it was complicated? "I don't know anymore," Hannah admitted. "I think you do," Rachel said. "I think you're just afraid to admit it." Hannah stayed at Rachel's that night, ignoring her phone and the emails still coming in from reporters looking for a story. She felt paralyzed, unable to move forward with Lucas or away from him, stuck in a limbo of her own making. The next morning, she woke to find a package outside Rachel's door. Inside was the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird Lucas had given her for Christmas, the one she'd left at his place weeks ago. There was a note attached in his handwriting. "I thought you might want this back. It belongs with you. Please take care of yourself. I'm always here if you need me." Hannah held the book against her chest and finally let herself cry. For what she'd lost, for what she'd never really had, for all the complications she'd never asked for but couldn't seem to escape. She didn't know if she was crying for Lucas or for herself or for the relationship that had seemed so perfect until it wasn't. She just knew that her heart was breaking, and she didn't know how to put it back together. March arrived with unpredictable weather, bright sunshine one moment, torrential rain the next, and Hannah felt like the sky was mirroring her internal state. She'd returned to her house after 2 days at Rachel's, grateful that the reporters had finally lost interest in the mystery girlfriend who refused to give them a story. School became her refuge again, the one place where she could lose herself in lesson plans and student papers and forget for a few hours at least about Lucas and everything that had happened. Her students were studying The Great Gatsby, and Hannah found herself drawing uncomfortable parallels between Gatsby's carefully constructed persona and Lucas's hidden identity. "Miss Cole," One of her seniors, a sharp girl named Maya, asked during class discussion, "Do you think Gatsby really loved Daisy, or did he just love the idea of her?" Hannah paused, chalk hovering over the board where she'd been writing notes about symbolism and the American dream. "What do you think?" "I think he loved a version of her that didn't exist anymore," Maya said. "He built her up in his head for 5 years, and when he finally got her back, she couldn't live up to what he'd imagined. It was doomed from the start because it was based on fantasy, not reality." The words hit Hannah harder than they should have. Had she done the same thing with Lucas? Built up a version of him in her mind, the modest gentleman who took the bus and fixed fences, and then felt betrayed when reality didn't match her fantasy? "That's a really insightful observation," Hannah managed. Gatsby's love was real to him, but it was built on an idealized past. He couldn't accept that people change, that time moves forward. He wanted to recreate something that was already gone. After class, Hannah sat at her desk long after the students had left, thinking about Gatsby and Daisy, about illusions and reality, about love that was real but built on unstable foundations. Her phone buzzed with the text from Lucas. He'd been sending one each day, nothing demanding, just small messages letting her know he was thinking of her. Today's read, "One of my students won a writing contest today. The first thing I wanted to do was tell you, I hope you're well." Hannah's throat tightened. She could picture his face as he'd typed that, could hear the quiet joy in his voice when he talked about students succeeding. That part of him had been real. The question was whether the real parts were enough to outweigh the hidden ones. She didn't respond, but she didn't delete the message either. She was keeping them all, reading them late at night when she couldn't sleep, trying to reconcile the man who wrote them with the man who'd kept such enormous secrets. That weekend, Hannah decided to do something she'd been avoiding. She searched for Lucas online. If she was going to make any kind of decision about their future, she needed to understand his world better, needed to see what she'd been blind to for 4 months. The search results were overwhelming. Pages and pages of articles about Lucas Gray, the self-made millionaire who'd built an education technology company from scratch and sold it for a fortune before he was 35. Photos of him at charity galas in tuxedos, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities, giving speeches at prestigious universities. But it was the older articles that caught Hannah's attention. She found a piece from 6 years ago, a profile in a business magazine that mentioned his engagement to Victoria Ashford, daughter of a prominent investment banker. The article described them as a power couple, showed photos of them at exclusive events, quoted Victoria talking about their plans for a lavish destination wedding. Then Hannah found the follow-up article, published a year later, announcing the engagement was off. No details, just a brief statement from Lucas's publicist saying they'd decided to go their separate ways and requesting privacy. Hannah kept digging, going deeper into the archives until she found what she was looking for, a gossip column from around the same time, speculating about the real reason for the breakup. According to unnamed sources, Victoria had left Lucas during a brief financial crisis when his company's sale had hit complications. The columnist noted that Victoria had been seen with a different wealthy man just weeks after the breakup, suggesting the relationship had been more about money than love. So Lucas's letter had been true. He'd been left when the money temporarily disappeared, had learned the hard way that his worth to some people was measured entirely in dollars. Hannah closed her laptop, feeling sick. She understood his fear now in a way she hadn't before. But understanding didn't erase her hurt, didn't change the fact that he'd kept her in the dark. The next morning, she woke to an email from the Riverside School District. Her heart sank as she read the subject line. Grant Opportunity, Gray Education Foundation. The email explained that the Gray Foundation was offering substantial grants to public schools in the district for literacy programs, new books, technology, teacher training. Applications were being accepted through the end of the month. Hannah's principal had already forwarded it to all staff, encouraging everyone to apply. Hannah stared at the email, anger and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like longing, warring in her chest. This was Lucas's work, the foundation he'd built to give other kids the opportunities he'd needed as a struggling student. This was real, meaningful work that would genuinely help her students. But it was also complicated. If she applied for the grant, would it look like she was using her connection to Lucas? Would people assume she'd been dating him to get funding for her school? And if she didn't apply, would she be denying her students resources they desperately needed just because her personal life was a mess? She forwarded the email to Rachel with a message. What do I do? Rachel's response came quickly. Apply. Your students need those resources, and you've earned the right to ask for them. His money doesn't change the fact that you're a great teacher with great ideas. Hannah knew Rachel was right, but the thought of reaching out to Lucas for anything, even through official foundation channels, made her feel vulnerable in a way she wasn't ready to handle. She set the email aside, telling herself she'd deal with it later. 2 days later, Hannah was leaving school when she noticed a familiar figure leaning against the fence near the parking lot. Her heart stuttered in her chest before her mind caught up with what she was seeing. It wasn't Lucas. It was a woman, late 50s maybe, with dark hair streaked with gray and Lucas's same intense eyes. Hannah Cole? The woman asked, straightening as Hannah approached. Yes, Hannah said warily, her keys clutched tight in her hand. I'm Margaret Gray, Lucas's mother. The woman extended her hand, her smile tentative. I was hoping we could talk. Hannah shook her hand automatically, her mind racing. How did you find me? Lucas mentioned where you worked. I hope that's not too intrusive. Margaret hesitated, looking uncertain in a way that reminded Hannah painfully of Lucas. I wanted to meet the woman who's made my son so miserable. Despite everything, Hannah almost smiled. I've made him miserable? Completely, Margaret said, but there was no accusation in her tone, just a matter-of-fact observation. He's been impossible since you stopped talking to him. Distracted, short-tempered, staring at his phone. Every 5 minutes hoping you'll text back. I haven't seen him like this since Victoria left. The name hung in the air between them. Hannah shifted her bag on her shoulder, unsure what to say. Can we go somewhere and talk? Margaret asked. Just for a few minutes. There's a coffee shop nearby, isn't there? Hannah almost said no. Almost got in her car and drove away, maintaining the boundaries she'd worked so hard to establish. But something in Margaret's face, a vulnerability, a hope, made her nod. They ended up at a small cafe 2 blocks from the school, nothing like Maple Street Cafe, which felt too sacred to share with anyone else. Margaret ordered tea, Hannah got coffee, and they sat in a corner booth with the awkward tension of 2 strangers who shared a connection neither had chosen. Lucas doesn't know I'm here, Margaret said, stirring honey into her tea. He'd probably be furious if he found out, but I had to meet you, had to understand what kind of woman could get through his walls. I'm not sure I did get through, Hannah said quietly. If I had, maybe he would have trusted me with the truth. Margaret was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. He told you about Victoria? In a letter, and I looked her up online. Then you know what she did to him. It wasn't a question. You know how she destroyed his ability to trust anyone's motives. I know he's been hurt, Hannah acknowledged, but that doesn't give him the right to lie to me. He didn't lie, Margaret said, then held up a hand when Hannah started to protest. I know. Omission, deception, whatever you want to call it. But Hannah, try to understand. Lucas has spent the last 5 years being completely isolated. He has employees and business partners and people who want things from him, but no real relationships. No one who sees him as just Lucas. Until me, Hannah said. Until you. Margaret leaned forward, her dark eyes intent. Do you know what he said when he first told me about you? He said, Mom, I met someone who likes me for my terrible jokes and my book recommendations, not for what I can buy her. He was so happy, Hannah. For the first time in years, he was genuinely happy. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. Then why didn't he trust me? Why didn't he tell me the truth? Because he's scared, Margaret said simply. Because every day he didn't tell you became another day he was afraid of losing you. It became this impossible situation where he was in too deep to know how to get out without everything falling apart. So what was his plan? Hannah asked, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Keep lying forever? Hope I never found out. I think he was planning to tell you, Margaret said. He told me he was working up to it, trying to find the right time. He just ran out of time before he found the courage. Hannah wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, seeking warmth. Mrs. Gray... Margaret, please. Margaret, I appreciate you coming here, I do. But I don't know what you want me to say. That I forgive him? That I'm willing to pretend the last 4 months weren't built on a false foundation? I don't want you to say anything, Margaret replied. I just want you to think about something. Lucas could date anyone, literally anyone. He could go to any charity gala or business function and have his pick of beautiful, accomplished women who'd be thrilled to be with him. I know that, Hannah said, the words like glass in her throat. But he doesn't want any of them, Margaret continued. He wants you, the woman who teaches literature and lives in a modest house and thinks cherry pie is the height of luxury. He wants you because you're real, because you see him, because you make him feel like a person instead of a bank account. That's not fair, Hannah whispered. But that's not fair to use my feelings against me. I'm not trying to use anything against you, Margaret said gently. I'm just asking you to consider whether you're willing to throw away something real because it started imperfectly. Because if you are, that's your right. But if there's any part of you that still loves my son, that still believes in what you had together, then maybe it's worth fighting for. Hannah blinked back tears. I don't know if I can trust him again. Then don't, Margaret said. Not yet. Trust is earned and Lucas needs to earn it back, but maybe give him the chance to try. They finished their drinks in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. When they parted ways in the parking lot, Margaret hugged Hannah briefly, surprising her with the spontaneous affection. Whatever you decide, Margaret said, thank you for making my son happy, even if it was only for a little while. He needed that more than you know. Hannah drove home with Margaret's words echoing in her mind, making everything more complicated instead of clearer. She'd wanted to stay angry, to hold on to her hurt and use it as armor against further pain. But Margaret had cracked that armor, had reminded her of all the reasons she'd fallen for Lucas in the first place. That night, Hannah pulled out all of Lucas's letters and texts, reading through them chronologically. She could see the progression of his feelings, the way he'd slowly opened up, shared more of himself even while keeping the biggest secret locked away. And she could see her own progression too, the way she'd tested him, pushed him away and pulled him close, made him prove himself over and over again before she'd let herself believe he was real. Maybe they'd both been so busy protecting themselves from past hurts that they'd hurt each other in the process. Her phone rang. Rachel. You need to see something, Rachel said without preamble. Check the local news website, now. Hannah pulled up the site on her laptop, her heart sinking as she saw the headline, Local Millionaire's Secret Romance, Gray Foundation CEO Spotted at Riverside High School. The article was short, speculative, filled with unnamed sources claiming Lucas had been seen multiple times at the school, that he'd donated books to a specific teacher's classroom, that insiders suggested a romantic involvement. There was even a blurry photo of Lucas carrying boxes into the school building. Hannah felt sick. This was her worst nightmare. Her private life becoming public fodder, her professional reputation potentially compromised by association with Lucas's wealth and status. She called Lucas without thinking, needing answers, needing to know if he'd had anything to do with this. He answered immediately. Hannah, did you talk to the press? She demanded. Did you tell someone about the books you donated? What? No. Hannah, what's going on? She told him about the article, her voice shaking with anger and fear. This is my career, Lucas, my reputation. If people think I got those books because we were dating, if they think I'm using my position to get funding from you, I'll handle it, Lucas said, his voice hard in a way she'd never heard. I'll release a statement clarifying that the book donation was made before we started dating, that it was part of a broader community initiative. I'll make sure everyone knows you had nothing to do with soliciting those donations. That's not the point, Hannah said, exhausted suddenly. The point is that this is your world, reporters and statements and managing public perception. That's what my life becomes if I'm with you. And I don't know if I can live like that. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I know, he said finally. I know this is hard. I know it's not what you signed up for. But Hannah, please don't make a decision based on one article by a bored reporter looking for a story. It's not just one article, Hannah said. It's everything. The press conference, the photographers at my house, your mother showing up at my school. My mother, what? Lucas sounded genuinely shocked. She came to see me yesterday, wanted to talk about us. Lucas let out a long breath. I'm sorry. She shouldn't have done that. I'll talk to her. She was actually really kind, Hannah admitted. But Lucas, don't you see? Even the people in your life don't operate like normal people. Your mother doesn't just call to arrange a coffee date. She ambushes me after school. You can't just send flowers to apologize. You have to send cease and desist letters to reporters. Everything is bigger, more complicated, more public. So what are you saying? Lucas's voice was tight, controlled. That you can't be with me because I have money? Because my life is too different from yours? I'm saying I don't know how to be with you, Hannah said, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to reconcile the man I fell for with the CEO I saw on television. I don't know how to trust someone who kept such huge secrets. And I don't know how to live a life where my private moments become public gossip. Then let me show you, Lucas said, desperation creeping into his voice. Let me prove that we can make this work. Just give me one more chance, Hannah. One honest conversation where I tell you everything and you decide if it's worth trying to move forward. Hannah closed her eyes, exhausted from fighting, from feeling, from trying to make sense of something that felt impossibly complicated. I need to think. Okay, Lucas said quietly. Take all the time you need. But Hannah, I'm not giving up on us. Not unless you tell me there's absolutely no hope, that you can't ever see yourself trusting me again. Unless you say that, I'm going to keep believing we can fix this. After they hung up, Hannah sat in silence, Lucas's words echoing through her mind. The truth was, she didn't know if there was hope. She was angry and hurt and confused, but underneath all of that was a stubborn thread of love she couldn't seem to sever no matter how hard she tried. The next day at school, Hannah's principal called her into his office. She went prepared for the worst, ready to defend herself against implications that she'd used her relationship with Lucas to benefit her classroom. Instead, Principal Morrison smiled at her from behind his desk. I wanted to talk to you about the Gray Foundation grant opportunity. Hannah's stomach dropped. I haven't decided if I'm going to apply. Well, you should, Morrison said. Your literacy program proposal was exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. I'd like to support your application with a strong recommendation. Hannah blinked, confused. You're not concerned about the article? About my connection to Lucas Gray? Morrison waved a dismissive hand. I read the foundation's statement this morning. They made it very clear that the book donation to your classroom was part of a community-wide initiative that predated any personal relationship, and that all grant applications will be evaluated blindly by an independent committee. Your connection to Mr. Gray won't help or hurt your chances. He put out a statement? Hannah asked. This morning. Very thorough, very professional. Seemed designed to protect your reputation as much as his own. Morrison leaned forward. Hannah, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, and frankly, it's none of my business. But I do know you're one of the best teachers in this school, and your students would benefit enormously from the kind of program you could build with foundation funding. Don't let personal complications stop you from pursuing something that could make a real difference. Hannah left his office in a daze, immediately pulling up the news website on her phone. Sure enough, there was a new article featuring a statement from the Gray Foundation. Lucas had kept his word, had moved quickly to protect her reputation, had thought about what she'd need before she'd even known she needed it. She found herself in her classroom, surrounded by the books he'd donated, thinking about all the students who'd discovered new worlds within those pages. Lucas had done that. Not because she'd asked, not because he wanted credit, but because he genuinely believed in the power of education to change lives. Hannah pulled out her laptop and opened the grant application. If she was honest with herself, she'd been wanting to expand her literacy program for years, had dreamed of creating something that could reach struggling readers and help them find their way to books. The Gray Foundation funding could make that dream a reality. She spent the next week working on the proposal, pouring all of her passion and frustration and confused feelings into creating something meaningful. When she finally submitted it, she felt both proud and terrified, knowing that whether or not she got the funding, she'd taken a step towards something bigger than herself. Lucas texted her the day the application period closed. However the committee decides, I hope you applied. Your ideas deserve support. Hannah stared at the message, touched that he'd known she'd struggle with the decision, that he understood the conflict she'd been feeling. She typed out a response. I did. Thank you for the statement. It helped. It was the first real communication they'd had in weeks, and it felt both monumental and insufficient. Spring break came with a week off from school, and Hannah decided to visit her sister in Portland. She needed distance, perspective, a chance to think without constantly running into reminders of Lucas around every corner in Riverside. Her sister Emma was 3 years older, married with 2 kids, living the kind of stable, predictable life Hannah had always thought she wanted. "So, let me get this straight," Emma said over wine after the kids were in bed. "You met a great guy, fell for him, found out he's rich, and now you're mad about it?" "It's more complicated than that," Hannah protested. "Is it though?" Emma took a sip of her wine. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're letting fear make your decisions again." "This isn't about fear," Hannah argued. "This is about trust, about honesty." "And about being terrified of getting hurt again," Emma added gently. "Hannah, I love you, but you've been using David as an excuse for 2 years. Every time you meet someone who might actually matter, you find a reason to push them away before they can hurt you." "Lucas lied to me." "Did he?" Emma challenged. "Or did he just not volunteer information you didn't ask for? Did you ever directly ask him how much money he made, what his job title was, where he lived?" Hannah opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Emma had a point. She'd accepted Lucas's vague descriptions of his work, had never pushed for details about his life outside their coffee dates. She'd been so focused on taking things slow, on protecting herself, that she'd never really asked the hard questions. "Even if I didn't ask," Hannah said slowly, "he should have told me, especially after we got close." "Maybe," Emma agreed. "But people are complicated, Hannah. They make mistakes, they get scared, they do stupid things while trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. Sound familiar?" Hannah glared at her sister. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours," Emma said firmly, "which is why I'm telling you the truth instead of what you want to hear. You found someone who makes you happy, someone who fixed your fence and brought books to your students and took care of you when you were sick. Someone who, by all accounts, is completely in love with you. Are you really going to throw that away because he was scared to tell you about his bank account?" "It's not just about the money," Hannah said, but the argument felt weaker than it had before. "Then what is it about?" Emma pressed. Hannah struggled to articulate what she was feeling. "It's about feeling like I don't know him, like the person I fell for was a character he was playing. It's about not knowing if I can trust my own judgment anymore." "Or," Emma suggested quietly, "it's about being terrified that this might actually work out, that you might actually get your happy ending, and not knowing how to handle that possibility." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow, because they were true. Somewhere along the way, she'd become so comfortable with her hurt and her caution and her carefully constructed walls that the thought of actually being happy, of actually trusting someone, had become scarier than being alone. Hannah spent the rest of the week in Portland thinking about Emma's words, about her own fear and Lucas's, about the relationship they'd built, and whether it was strong enough to survive the truth. She went to her nephew's soccer game and her niece's dance recital and watched Emma and her husband move through their life with the easy comfort of people who'd chosen each other and kept choosing each other, even when it was hard. On her last night there, Emma gave her a hug at the airport. "Whatever you decide," she said, "make sure it's based on what you want, not what you're afraid of." Hannah flew back to Riverside with her head full of questions and her heart full of conflicting emotions. She'd spent so long being angry, being hurt, being certain that Lucas had betrayed her. But underneath all of that was a truth she'd been avoiding. She missed him, missed his quiet presence and gentle humor, missed the way he listened like her words mattered, missed feeling seen and valued and chosen. The question was whether missing someone was enough reason to take them back, whether love could overcome the obstacles they'd created. She didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like maybe she was finally asking the right questions. Hannah returned to Riverside on a Sunday evening, her apartment feeling smaller and emptier than she remembered. She unpacked slowly, putting off the inevitable moment when she'd have to check her phone and see if Lucas had texted while she was gone. He had. Just one message, sent 3 days ago. "I hope Portland is good for you. Take all the time you need." She stared at those words for a long time, touched by the restraint they showed. The old Lucas would have sent daily updates, would have tried to stay connected even when she'd asked for space, This Lucas was respecting her boundaries even when it clearly cost him. Hannah set down her phone without responding and made herself a cup of tea, then sat on her couch with the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird he'd given her for Christmas. She opened to the inscription, reading his words again. For Hannah, who teaches others to see the mockingbird, always, Lucas. Always. Such a big promise from someone who'd kept such big secrets. But then again, he'd kept showing up, hadn't he? Through her anger and her silence and her doubt, he'd stayed present in the only ways she'd allow. Careful texts, protective statements to the press, giving her the space she'd demanded while making it clear he hadn't given up. The question Emma had asked echoed through her mind. What did she actually want? Not what she was afraid of or running from, but what she genuinely wanted for her life. The answer came more easily than she'd expected. She wanted Lucas. She wanted Saturday morning coffee and unexpected fence repairs, and someone who remembered that cherry pie was her favorite. She wanted the man who'd read to her when she was sick and brought books to her students and looked at her like she was the most important person in the room. But wanting wasn't enough. She needed to know if they could build something real and lasting, something that could withstand the pressures of his public life and the complications of their different worlds. She needed to know if trust could be rebuilt from broken pieces. Monday morning brought the usual chaos of returning from break. Students hyped up from a week of freedom, lesson plans that needed adjusting, a mountain of emails to sort through. Hannah was halfway through her inbox when she saw one from the Gray Foundation with the subject line, Grant Application Update. Her heart hammered as she opened it, afraid to hope. Dear Ms. Cole, we are pleased to inform you that your literacy program proposal has been selected for funding. The Independent Review Committee was impressed by your innovative approach to reaching struggling readers and your comprehensive plan for implementation. You have been awarded a grant of $75,000 to be distributed over the next 2 academic years. Congratulations on this achievement. A member of our team will be in contact within the week to discuss next steps and funding timelines. Sincerely, the Gray Education Foundation Grant Committee. Hannah read the email 3 times, tears blurring her vision by the third read. $75,000. She could do everything she'd dreamed of. New books, technology, after-school programs, professional development for other teachers. She could change lives with this funding. Her first instinct was to call Lucas, to share the news with him, to hear his voice telling her how proud he was. But she caught herself, remembering that this wasn't his victory to celebrate. The grant had been awarded by an independent committee who hadn't known about their relationship. She'd earned this on her own merit, through the quality of her proposal and the strength of her ideas. Still, she couldn't deny that Lucas had created the foundation that made this possible. His money, his vision, his belief that education could change lives, all of that had led to this moment. She forwarded the email to Principal Morrison and Rachel, then sat at her desk trying to process what this meant. The grant was validation that her work mattered, that her ideas had value. But it was also a connection to Lucas that she couldn't sever. A reminder that his influence would be part of her professional life whether or not they resolved their personal relationship. Her phone rang during lunch. Margaret Gray. Hannah almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hello? Hannah, it's Margaret. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I'm at lunch, Hannah said, stepping out of the teacher's lounge into the empty hallway. I'll be brief then. I wanted to apologize for ambushing you at your school. Lucas was quite angry when he found out, and he was right to be. I overstepped. Hannah leaned against the wall, surprised. It's okay. You were trying to help your son. I was, Margaret agreed, but that doesn't give me the right to insert myself into your life uninvited. So I'm sorry. Truly. Thank you, Hannah said softly. I appreciate that. There was a pause, then Margaret spoke again, her voice careful. I also wanted to tell you something, not as Lucas's mother, but as someone who's watched him struggle these past few weeks. He's been meeting with a therapist. Hannah straightened. What? He called me about 2 weeks ago and said he needed to talk to someone professional about his trust issues, his fear of vulnerability, all the ways his past has been affecting his present. He said he wanted to understand himself better so he could be better for you. If you'd give him another chance, or for whoever came after if you didn't, Hannah felt her throat tighten. He didn't tell me that. He wouldn't, Margaret said. Lucas doesn't do things for show. He does them because they need to be done. But I thought you should know that he's not just waiting around hoping you'll forgive him. He's actively working on the issues that caused this mess in the first place. After they hung up, Hannah stood in the hallway long after the lunch bell rang, thinking about Lucas sitting in a therapist's office, confronting the wounds Victoria had left, the fear that had driven him to hide his wealth from the one person he'd wanted to be honest with. She was still thinking about it that evening when there was a knock at her door. Her heart leapt, hoping it was Lucas, but instead she found a delivery person holding a large envelope. Hannah Cole? Yes. Sign here, please. She signed and took the envelope, closing the door before opening it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, expensive and beautiful, with her initials embossed on the cover. A note was tucked inside the first page in Lucas's handwriting. Hannah, I'm not writing to ask for anything or to try to change your mind. I'm writing because I owe you the complete truth, the whole story without any omissions or protective lies. You asked me once why I chose you. This is the real answer. You can do whatever you want with this information. Read it, burn it, throw it away. I just needed you to have it. Whatever happens between us, you deserve to know who I actually am. Lucas. Hannah opened the journal to find page after page of Lucas's handwriting, neat and precise, filling the book with words he'd apparently been writing for weeks. She curled up on her couch and began to read. He'd started at the beginning, his childhood in poverty, a father who'd left before he was born, a mother who'd worked herself nearly to death to keep them fed. He wrote about being the kid with holes in his shoes, about learning to be invisible so other students wouldn't notice he wore the same 3 shirts in rotation, about discovering books as an escape from a reality that felt suffocating. He wrote about the teacher who'd changed his life, Mrs. Patterson, who'd seen past his carefully constructed walls to the smart, hungry kid underneath. How she'd created opportunities for him to earn money without it feeling like charity. How she'd encouraged him to apply to college even when he'd been certain he couldn't afford it. He wrote about getting the scholarship, about working 3 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA, about the isolation of being poor among wealthy students who couldn't understand what it meant to choose between buying a required textbook or eating that week. Then came the company, started in his dorm room with a roommate who'd believed in his idea for education software. The long nights coding, the rejections from investors, the moment when everything had finally clicked and the company had taken off. He described the surreal experience of suddenly having more money than he knew what to do with, of people who'd ignored him before suddenly wanting to be his friend. He wrote about Victoria in painful detail, how beautiful she'd been, how confident, how she'd seemed to genuinely love him. Their engagement, the planning for a future together, his certainty that he'd finally found someone who saw past the money to the person underneath. Then the complications with the company sale, the temporary cash flow problems, Victoria's growing distance. He described finding her note on the kitchen counter, the casual cruelty of her words. I can't do this anymore. I need stability, and you can't give me that right now. The pages after that were raw with pain. His realization that she'd never loved him, that he'd been valued only for what he could provide, that everything he'd thought was real had been a transaction. He wrote about the walls he'd built after that, the decision to keep his wealth hidden from future relationships, the loneliness of never knowing if someone genuinely cared about him, or just about his bank account. And then he wrote about meeting Hannah at Maple Street Cafe, about how nervous he'd been walking through that door, about the moment he'd seen her and felt something shift inside him. He described their first conversation in detail, the topics they'd covered, the way she'd looked when she talked about her students, how her honesty about her own fears had made him want to be honest too. I should have told you that first night, he wrote. Should have laid everything out and let you decide if you wanted to take the risk. But you were so real, so genuine, and I was terrified of watching that change, terrified of seeing you start to calculate what I could give you instead of just enjoying who we were together. Every week I told myself I'd tell you the next week, but every week that passed made it harder, not easier. The secret became this weight I was carrying, getting heavier and heavier, and I didn't know how to put it down without crushing everything we'd built. I was a coward. There's no other word for it. I let my fear of losing you prevent me from giving you the truth you deserved. And in the end, My cowardice cost me exactly what I'd been trying to protect. He wrote about the press conference, about knowing she'd see it and dreading her reaction, about wanting to run to her immediately to explain but respecting her request for space, about the agony of sending careful texts and getting no response, of wondering if he'd destroyed the best thing in his life through his own stupidity. The final entry was dated the day before. I'm meeting with Dr. Chen again tomorrow. She's helping me understand why I do this, why I hide, why I test people, why I'm so afraid of being vulnerable. It's slow work, uncomfortable work, but necessary work. Whether or not you ever forgive me, I need to do this. I need to be better than the scared man who lied by omission to the woman he was falling in love with. Because I do love you, Hannah. I should have said it weeks ago, should have told you while I still had the chance. I love your passion for teaching and your loyalty to your students. I love the way you cry at beautiful writing and laugh at terrible puns. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you see the best in people even after being hurt. I love you for seeing me, the real me, the one who exists underneath all the noise and expectations. And I'm sorry that my fear prevented me from seeing you back, from trusting you the way you deserve to be trusted. I don't know what happens next. Maybe you've already decided you can't forgive me, can't move past what I did. Maybe reading this won't change anything, but you deserve to know the whole truth, messy and painful and complicated as it is. You deserved it months ago, and I failed you by not giving it to you then. Whatever you decide, thank you for the months we had. Thank you for making me believe, even briefly, that I could be loved for who I am instead of what I have. That gift is more precious than any amount of money. Always, Lucas. Hannah closed the journal with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. She felt cracked open, raw, seeing Lucas's pain and vulnerability laid bare on the page. He'd given her everything she'd asked for, complete honesty, the whole story, no more secrets or omissions. And in doing so, he'd shown her something she'd been too hurt and angry to see before. They were both damaged people trying to protect themselves from further pain, both so afraid of being hurt again that they'd hurt each other instead. She thought about Emma's question. What did she actually want? And underneath all the fear and anger and complicated feelings, the answer was still the same. She wanted Lucas. She wanted the chance to build something real with him, to learn to trust again, to create a relationship based on honesty, even when honesty was terrifying. But wanting wasn't the same as being ready. She needed to figure out if she could actually forgive him, if she could move past the betrayal to something stronger on the other side. Hannah spent the next 2 days reading and rereading the journal, processing everything Lucas had shared. She thought about calling him, texting him, showing up at his office, wherever that was, since she still didn't actually know basic facts about his daily life. The realization stopped her cold. She'd been angry at Lucas for keeping secrets, but she'd never really asked questions either. She'd been content with surface-level knowledge, with the version of him that fit comfortably into her world. She'd never pushed for more because pushing for more meant making herself vulnerable, meant admitting she cared enough to want the whole picture. They'd both been playing it safe in different ways, both trying to protect themselves. And in the process, they'd created exactly the kind of unstable foundation they'd been trying to avoid. On Wednesday evening, Hannah texted Lucas, "Thank you for the journal, for being honest. Can we talk?" His response came within seconds. "Anytime, anywhere, just name it." She thought about suggesting Maple Street Cafe, their usual place, but that felt too familiar, too weighted with the ghosts of all their previous conversations. She needed somewhere neutral, somewhere they could talk openly without the pressure of nostalgia. "The park near my house, tomorrow at 6? I'll be there." Hannah barely slept that night, running through potential conversations in her head, trying to figure out what she wanted to say and how to say it. She taught her classes the next day in a fog, her mind already at the park, already sitting across from Lucas trying to figure out if they had a future. She arrived at the park 15 minutes early, choosing a bench near the pond where ducks glided across the water and early spring flowers were just beginning to bloom. The evening air was cool but not cold, carrying the promise of warmer days ahead. Lucas arrived exactly at 6, and Hannah's breath caught at the sight of him. He looked thinner than she remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. But his eyes lit up when he saw her, and the smile that crossed his face was so full of hope and fear that Hannah felt her heart crack a little more. "Hi," he said, sitting on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining careful distance. Hi, Hannah replied. For a long moment, they just sat there, the silence between them heavy with everything that needed to be said and nothing that felt safe to start with. Finally, Lucas spoke. I don't know where to begin. Neither do I, Hannah admitted. I've been rehearsing this conversation in my head for 2 days, and now that you're actually here, I can't remember any of it. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. For what it's worth, I've been doing the same thing. Hannah took a deep breath. I read your journal. All of it. Multiple times. And? Lucas's voice was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. And I understand now. Why you did it, I mean. I don't agree with it, but I understand. Hannah turned to face him more fully. But Lucas, understanding why you kept secrets doesn't make the secrets okay. It doesn't erase the fact that I spent 4 months building a relationship with someone who wasn't being completely honest with me. I know, Lucas said quietly. I'm not asking you to say it's okay. It's not okay. It was wrong, and I hurt you, and I hate myself for that. Don't, Hannah said. Don't hate yourself. That's not what I want. Then what do you want? Lucas asked, his dark eyes searching her face. Because I'll give you anything, Hannah. Anything within my power to give. Hannah looked out at the pond, watching the ducks and trying to organize her thoughts. I want honesty. Complete, uncomfortable, scary honesty. I want to know about your life, where you live, what your days look like, what responsibilities you have. I want to understand your world instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Done, Lucas said immediately. I want you to trust me, Hannah continued, to believe that I can handle difficult truths, that I'm strong enough to love you for who you actually are, instead of some version you think I need you to be. I do trust you, Lucas said. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I do. The problem was never trusting you, it was trusting myself. Trusting that I was enough without the money, that someone could actually want me instead of what I could provide. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. You are enough. You've always been enough. The fence fixing and the book donations and the careful texts, those things mattered because they came from you, not because of how much they cost. I'm starting to believe that, Lucas said. Dr. Chen is helping me see how my past has been controlling my present, making me sabotage good things because I'm afraid they'll turn out like bad things. Your mom told me you were seeing a therapist, Hannah admitted. Lucas nodded. I should have started years ago. After Victoria, I should have dealt with what that relationship did to me instead of just building walls and hoping they'd keep me safe. I built walls too, Hannah said. After David, I was so afraid of being fooled again that I never really let you in. I never asked the hard questions because I was scared of the answers. I let you keep your secrets because it was easier than risking my heart. They sat with that admission for a moment, both of them recognizing the ways they'd failed each other and themselves. So where does that leave us? Lucas asked finally. Hannah turned to look at him fully, seeing the fear and hope warring in his expression. I don't know. I'm still hurt. I'm still angry sometimes. But I also miss you. I miss what we had, and I want to believe we could have something even better if we're both brave enough to be completely honest. I want that too, Lucas said. More than anything. But I need time, Hannah continued. I need us to start over in some ways, to build something based on truth instead of omissions. I need to learn who you actually are, and I need you to learn who I actually am, not the version of me that fits into your fantasy of a simple life, but the real me with all my complications and insecurities. How do we do that? Lucas asked. Hannah thought about it, about what she actually needed to move forward. We date, really date. You take me to your actual apartment, show me your actual life. I meet your friends, you meet mine. We have the uncomfortable conversations about money and expectations and what our future might look like. We do the hard work instead of pretending it's easy. Okay, Lucas said. When do we start? Now, Hannah said. Tell me where you live, what your apartment looks like, what you do on days when you're not fixing my fence or bringing books to my students. Lucas smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. I live in the Riverside Towers downtown. 15th floor, corner unit. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, more space than one person needs. Modern furniture that an interior designer picked out because I have no idea how to make a place feel like home. Do you like it? Hannah asked. Lucas shook his head. Not really. It's impressive, but it doesn't feel like mine. It feels like a showpiece, like something designed to impress people I don't even care about impressing. What would you want if you could have anything? Something smaller, Lucas said without hesitation. Maybe a house with a yard, room for a garden, a porch where I could sit in the mornings with coffee, bookshelves built into the walls, space that feels lived in instead of staged. Hannah smiled despite herself. That sounds nice. What about you? Lucas asked. If you could have any home, what would it be? I like my house, Hannah said. It's small, but it's mine. I'd want to fix it up, though, replace that porch light that flickers, repaint the kitchen, maybe add a sunroom for reading, make it feel more complete. I could help with that, Lucas offered, then caught himself. Sorry, I'm trying not to jump in and fix things. Dr. Chen says I do that. Try to solve problems with money or action instead of just being present with people. I appreciate the offer, though, Hannah said, and maybe someday I'll take you up on it. But right now I need to know we can just be together without you always trying to fix things for me. I can do that, Lucas said, or I can learn to do it. It might take practice. They talked for another hour, Lucas sharing details about his life that he'd kept hidden. The foundation's board meetings and fundraising galas, the pressure to always be on in public, the loneliness of success without meaningful connections. Hannah shared her own struggles, the financial stress of living paycheck to paycheck, the exhaustion of teaching and grading with not enough hours in the day, her fear that she'd never be enough for someone from his world. As the sun set and the park lights flickered on, Hannah felt something shift between them. Not a resolution exactly, but a foundation, a real one this time, built on honesty instead of assumptions. Can I see you again? Lucas asked as they walked back toward the parking lot. Really see you, I mean. Take you to dinner, show you my apartment, introduce you to my life? Yes, Hannah said, but slowly. I need us to take this slowly. Slow is good, Lucas agreed. Slow is what we should have done the first time. They reached Hannah's car, and she turned to face him. In the dim light of the parking lot, he looked vulnerable and hopeful and scared, all the things she was feeling reflected back at her. Lucas, she said softly, I forgive you. I don't know if I'm ready to forget, and I still need time to rebuild trust. But I forgive you for being scared and making mistakes and trying to protect something good in the only way you knew how. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he whispered. I don't deserve that, but thank you. We both deserve a second chance, Hannah said. We both deserve to try again and do better. She reached out and took his hand, feeling his fingers close around hers with gentle pressure. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't a promise of forever. But it was a beginning, a real one this time, based on truth and trust and the belief that broken things could be mended if both people were willing to do the work. Saturday? Lucas asked. Dinner at my place? I'll cook, and you can see the apartment and mock my interior designer's choices. Hannah laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. Saturday. But I'm bringing wine, and you have to promise not to make it fancy. Just cooking, like you do for yourself. Deal, Lucas said, smiling in a way that reminded her of all the reasons she'd fallen for him in the first place. She drove home with her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks, knowing the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but believing for the first time that it might actually lead somewhere good. She had her grant funding, her students, her small house with the flickering porch light. And maybe, if they both worked at it, she might have Lucas too. Not the fantasy version or the hidden CEO, but the real person underneath all of that, scared and hopeful and trying to be better. It was more than she'd had when she woke up that morning. It was enough to build on. And for now, that was exactly what she needed. Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, bright sunshine, and a breeze that carried the scent of cherry blossoms from the trees lining Hannah's street. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, changing outfits 3 times before Rachel called to talk her down from her anxiety spiral. It's just dinner, Rachel said through the phone. You've had dinner with him dozens of times. Not at his actual apartment, Hannah countered, staring at her reflection. Not in his real life. What if I don't fit there? What if I see how he actually lives and realize we're too different? Then you'll deal with it, Rachel said firmly. But Hannah, you're looking for reasons to be scared. Stop it. You already decided to give this another chance. Now follow through. Hannah took a deep breath and settled on jeans and a soft blue sweater that Rachel had once said made her eyes look like the ocean. Simple, comfortable, herself. That's what Lucas said he wanted, and that's what she was determined to give him. The drive downtown felt longer than it should have, her stomach twisting with nerves as she navigated through streets that grew progressively more upscale. Riverside Towers was exactly what she'd imagined. Sleek glass and steel, a doorman in a pressed uniform, a lobby with marble floors and modern art that probably cost more than her car. The doorman smiled politely as she approached. Good evening, how can I help you? I'm here to see Lucas Gray, 15th floor. Your name, please? Hannah Cole. He checked his tablet, then nodded. Mr. Gray is expecting you. The elevators are straight ahead. You'll need to use this key card for the 15th floor. He handed her a sleek black card that felt heavy with implication. Hannah rode the elevator in silence, watching the numbers climb and trying to calm her racing heart. When the doors opened directly into Lucas's apartment, because of course his place had a private elevator, she stepped into a space that took her breath away for all the wrong reasons. It was beautiful, objectively speaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors. Abstract art hung on the walls, probably originals. Everything was perfect, coordinated, impressive, and absolutely soulless. Lucas appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt, his feet bare against the hardwood floors. He looked nervous, hopeful, and achingly familiar despite the unfamiliar surroundings. Hi, he said, his smile tentative. You found it okay? Your doorman is very thorough, Hannah said, still taking in the space. She set down the bottle of wine she'd brought and walked toward the windows. Lucas, this view is incredible. But? He prompted, coming to stand beside her. Hannah turned to look at him. But this doesn't feel like you. It feels like a hotel. Beautiful, impressive, expensive, but not lived in. Not loved. Lucas's shoulders relaxed slightly. I was afraid you'd love it, that you'd see all this and think it was what I actually wanted. Is any of this what you actually wanted? He shook his head. The interior designer asked what I liked, and I didn't have an answer, so she created this, and I never bothered to change it because I'm barely here anyway. I work, I sleep, I leave. That's about it. Hannah walked through the living room, noticing the lack of personal touches. No photos, no books, except for a few hardcovers that looked like they'd been chosen for their aesthetic value rather than their content. The kitchen was spotless, the kind of clean that came from rarely being used. You said you were cooking tonight, Hannah observed. Lucas had the grace to look sheepish. I might have panicked and called my mom for her lasagna recipe. She's been coaching me through text for the past 2 hours. I'm pretty sure I've set a record for most questions asked about boiling pasta. Despite her nerves, Hannah laughed. The image of Lucas frantically texting his mother about cooking basics was so endearing, so human, that it eased some of her anxiety. Can I help? She asked. You can keep me company and mock my technique, Lucas said, leading her into the kitchen. Fair warning, I may have bought 3 different types of pasta because I wasn't sure which one was right. They worked together in the kitchen, Hannah chopping vegetables while Lucas concentrated intensely on layering the lasagna according to Margaret's detailed instructions. He narrated the texts from his mother, doing an impression of her that was both affectionate and accurate, making Hannah laugh so hard she nearly cut her finger. Your mom seems wonderful, Hannah said, wiping her eyes. She is, Lucas agreed. She wanted to meet you properly, by the way. Not ambush you after school, but actually sit down and talk. No pressure, but she's been asking. Hannah considered this. I'd like that. Maybe we could invite her to dinner sometime. Here, or at my place, wherever feels right. The hope that flashed across Lucas's face made Hannah's chest ache. Such a simple thing, planning to meet each other's family, but it clearly meant the world to him. While the lasagna baked, Lucas gave her a proper tour of the apartment. The second bedroom was set up as an office, and here Hannah finally saw signs of the real Lucas. Books overflowed from shelves, stacked on the desk and floor. Papers and reports covered every surface. A bulletin board held photos. Lucas with Margaret, with people Hannah assumed were friends or colleagues, one of him at what looked like a school dedication ceremony. "This is where you actually live," Hannah said, taking in the organized chaos. "This is where I work, mostly," Lucas corrected. "But yes, this room feels more like mine than the rest of the apartment combined." Hannah studied the photos more closely. "Tell me about these people. Your actual life? Your actual friends?" Lucas spent the next half hour introducing her to his world through photographs and stories. His college roommate Marcus, who'd helped build the company and was now his CFO. His assistant Jennifer, who kept his schedule organized and called him out when he was being stubborn. The foundation's program director Sarah, who shared his passion for education reform. "They all want to meet you," Lucas admitted. "They've been asking about you for weeks, ever since I showed up to work looking like I'd been hit by a truck." "That bad, huh?" "Worse," Lucas said. "Marcus threatened to stage an intervention. Jennifer started leaving self-help books on my desk. It was a whole thing." When the lasagna was ready, they ate at Lucas's dining table, which Hannah suspected had never actually been used for dining. Lucas had attempted to make it nice. Candles, cloth napkins, proper plates instead of takeout containers. The lasagna was slightly overcooked on the edges and undercooked in the middle, but it tasted like effort and care, and Hannah found herself enjoying it more than any perfect meal at a fancy restaurant. "This is good," she said, meaning it. "Your mom would be proud." "My mom would point out all the things I did wrong," Lucas said, but he was smiling. "But she'd also say it was a good first try." They talked through dinner about everything and nothing: Hannah's grant implementation plans, Lucas's upcoming foundation projects, movies they wanted to see, books they were reading. The conversation flowed easily, the way it always had between them, but with a new layer of honesty that made everything feel more solid. After dinner, they moved to the couch with wine, and Hannah finally asked the question she'd been holding back. "Tell me about Victoria. Not just what was in the journal, but how you feel about her now." Lucas was quiet for a moment, staring into his wine glass. "I don't think about her much anymore. The therapist helped me see that what I was really angry about wasn't losing Victoria specifically, but what she represented. The confirmation of my worst fears, that I was only valuable for what I could provide. And now? Now I'm working on believing that's not true, that I have value beyond my bank account. It's harder than it should be, confronting those beliefs." He turned to look at her. "But being with you helps. You've never asked me for anything, never treated me differently after finding out about the money. Well, except for being furious with me, but that was about the lying, not the wealth itself." "I was furious," Hannah agreed. "I'm still processing it, honestly. Some days I wake up and I'm fine, and other days I remember that press conference and feel angry all over again." "That's fair," Lucas said. "I don't expect you to just be over it. Trust takes time to rebuild." Hannah set down her wine and shifted to face him more fully. "Lucas, I need to tell you something. About David. About why his betrayal hit me so hard." "You don't have to." "I do," Hannah interrupted. "Because you've been honest with me about your past, and I need to be honest about mine." She took a breath and let the story spill out. How she'd met David at a friend's party, how charming he'd been, how he'd swept her off her feet with grand gestures and big promises. How she'd believed every word, had started planning a future with him, had introduced him to her family and friends. "He proposed on my 30th birthday," Hannah said, her voice tight with old pain. "In front of everyone I loved. This big public declaration. I felt like the luckiest person in the world." "What happened?" Lucas asked gently. "I found out he was drowning in debt. Credit cards, loans, gambling losses, hundreds of thousands of dollars he'd hidden from me. He'd been using my good credit to take out more loans, putting bills in my name without telling me. When I confronted him, he admitted he'd only proposed because he thought marriage would make it easier to access my assets, to use me as collateral for his debts." Lucas looked horrified. "Hannah, I called off the wedding," Hannah continued. spent a year untangling my finances from his mess, dealing with creditors and lawyers, and the humiliation of everyone knowing I'd been such a fool. For 2 years after that, I couldn't trust anyone. Couldn't believe people when they said they cared about me. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for everyone to reveal their true motives. "I'm so sorry," Lucas said. "I had no idea it was that bad." "So when I found out about your money," Hannah said, meeting his eyes, "all I could think was, here we go again. Another person who lied about money, who kept secrets, who turned out to be someone completely different than I thought. It triggered every fear I'd been carrying, every scar David had left." "But I'm not him," Lucas said firmly. "I didn't use you or try to take advantage of you." "I know that now," Hannah said, "but in the moment it felt the same. It felt like betrayal, like I'd been fooled again by my own poor judgment." Lucas reached for her hand. "Your judgment isn't poor. David was a con artist, and he fooled you because you're trusting and kind and you wanted to see the best in people. That's not a flaw, Hannah. That's who you are, and it's one of the things I love about you." Hannah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I've been so afraid of being that person again, the naive woman who believes pretty lies and ignores red flags. I thought if I was careful enough, cautious enough, I could protect myself from ever being hurt like that again. But being careful meant missing out on real connections," Lucas said. "Yes," Hannah whispered. "And when I met you, you felt safe. You weren't flashy or pushy or too good to be true. You were just steady, real, someone I thought I could trust." "You can trust me," Lucas said. "I know I messed up. I know I gave you reasons to doubt that. But Hannah, I swear to you, I will spend however long it takes proving that you can trust me with your heart." Hannah looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers laced through hers with such careful tenderness. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it," Lucas said. "Take a leap of faith. I know it's scary. I know you've been burned before. But I'm not David, and you're not the same person you were when he hurt you. We're both different people, trying to do better, trying to be brave enough for something real." Hannah leaned forward until her forehead rested against his. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Me too," Lucas said. "But I think being terrified together is better than being safe and alone." She kissed him then, soft and gentle, a kiss that tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. Lucas's hand came up to cup her face, his touch reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. When they pulled apart, both breathing a little harder, Hannah smiled. "So, what happens now?" "Now," Lucas said, "we take it one day at a time. We're honest with each other, even when it's hard. We work on trust, on building something real, and we see where it goes." "No more secrets," Hannah said firmly. "No more secrets," Lucas agreed. "Starting now. Ask me anything, and I'll tell you the truth." Hannah thought about it, about all the things she still didn't know. "What time do you wake up in the morning?" Lucas blinked, clearly expecting a harder question. 6:30 usually," said Sid, "sometimes earlier if I can't sleep." "What do you have for breakfast?" "Coffee and whatever I can grab on the way to work. Usually nothing, which my mom hates." "What's your favorite color?" "Blue," Lucas said. "The exact shade of your eyes." Hannah felt her cheeks warm. "What scares you most about us?" Lucas's expression grew serious. "That I'll disappoint you, that I'll make another mistake and you'll realize you can't trust me after all. That the differences between our worlds will become too much to navigate, and you'll decide I'm not worth the effort." "And what makes you hopeful about us?" "Everything," Lucas said simply. "The way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you challenge me to be better. The way you're sitting here right now, giving us another chance even though I don't deserve it. The way you see me, really see me, in a way no one else ever has." Hannah asked question after question, and Lucas answered them all. His favorite book, his worst fear, his secret dreams for the future. He told her about the house he wanted to buy someday, with a big kitchen and a library and a garden. About wanting kids eventually, wanting to give them the stability he'd never had. About his hope that the foundation would outlast him, would keep changing lives long after he was gone. As the night deepened and the city lights sparkled beyond the windows, Hannah felt the last of her walls beginning to crumble. This was what she'd needed, not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but simple honesty, the truth of who Lucas was, flaws and fears and hopes all included. "Stay," Lucas said as the clock neared midnight. "Not like that," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "Just stay. Sleep in the guest room. Wake up here. Let me make you breakfast and burn the toast and prove that my real life can include you." Hannah should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries, taken things slow, protected herself from moving too fast. But she was tired of being careful, tired of letting fear make her decisions. "Okay," she said, "but I'm making the coffee. I've tasted your coffee, and it's terrible." Lucas laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. "Deal." He set her up in the guest room, which was as impersonal as the rest of the apartment, but had clean sheets and a comfortable bed. He lent her a t-shirt to sleep in, and Hannah pretended not to notice how happy he looked seeing her in his clothes. "Good night, Hannah," he said from the doorway. "Good night, Lucas." Hannah lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of Lucas moving through the apartment, getting ready for sleep. She should have felt anxious, out of place in this expensive tower so far from her small house and familiar neighborhood. Instead, she felt peaceful, like she'd finally found her way to where she was supposed to be. The next morning, Hannah woke to the smell of burning toast and Lucas's creative cursing from the kitchen. She patted out in his t-shirt and her jeans from the night before to find him scraping blackened bread over the sink. "I thought you said you could cook," she teased. "I said I made lasagna," Lucas corrected. "I never claimed competence with a toaster." They made breakfast together. Eggs that were only slightly runny, toast that was only slightly burned, coffee that Hannah insisted on brewing herself. They ate at the kitchen counter, their knees touching, talking about their plans for the day. "I have a foundation board meeting this afternoon," Lucas said. "Boring budget stuff mostly, but tonight, if you're free, there's a gallery opening one of my friends is hosting. Contemporary art, wine, people making pretentious comments about brushstrokes. Would you want to come? Meet some of the people in my life?" Hannah's first instinct was to say no, to retreat back to the safety of her own world. But that's what the old Hannah would have done, and she was trying to be braver. "Yes," she said, "but you have to promise to mock the pretentious comments with me." "Obviously," Lucas said, grinning. "That's half the fun." The gallery opening that evening was exactly what Lucas had promised. Contemporary art that Hannah didn't entirely understand, wine that was probably expensive, people in expensive clothes discussing technique and vision. But Lucas stayed at her side, introducing her to friends and colleagues, his hand warm on her lower back, his pride in her obvious every time he said, "This is Hannah." She met Marcus, whose handshake was firm and whose smile was knowing. "So you're the one who's had our boy tied in knots for months. Nice to finally put a face to the name." She met Jennifer, who hugged her like an old friend. "Thank you for giving him another chance. He's been insufferable without you." She met Sarah from the foundation, who immediately started talking about Hannah's grant proposal with genuine enthusiasm. "Your literacy program is brilliant. I pushed hard for it in committee. Those kids are going to thrive under your guidance." Everyone was warm and welcoming, folding Hannah into their circle like she'd always belonged there. And slowly, the anxiety she'd been carrying about not fitting into Lucas's world began to ease. These weren't pretentious strangers. They were real people who cared about Lucas and by extension seemed ready to care about her too. Late in the evening, Hannah found herself standing in front of an abstract painting, trying to make sense of the swirls of blue and gold. "What do you think?" Lucas asked, coming to stand beside her with fresh glasses of wine. "I think I have no idea what I'm looking at," Hannah admitted. "But the colors are pretty." Lucas laughed. "Marcus paid $15,000 for one of this artist's pieces last year." "$15,000?" Hannah's voice came out strangled. "For paint on canvas?" "Art is subjective," Lucas said diplomatically. "Art is expensive," Hannah corrected. Then she paused, thinking about the differences between their worlds, about the casual way Lucas's friends spent money that would take her months to save. "Lucas, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "How do we make this work? You and me, I mean. Your friends buy $15,000 paintings, and I clip coupons for groceries. You live in a tower with a doorman, and I'm thrilled when I can afford to replace my porch light. How do we bridge that gap?" Lucas set down his wine glass and took her hand. "We talk about it. We're honest about how we feel, what we need. We don't pretend the differences don't exist, but we also don't let them define us." "But they matter," Hannah insisted. "Money matters. It affects everything, where we go, what we do, how we live our lives." "So we compromise," Lucas said. "Some nights we go to gallery openings and fancy restaurants. Other nights we get pie at Maple Street Cafe. Some vacations we might travel somewhere extravagant. Other times we might just drive to the coast and stay in a motel. We create a life that includes both our worlds instead of choosing one over the other." "And if I can't afford to keep up?" Hannah asked quietly, voicing her deepest fear. "If your life requires expensive clothes and charity galas and all these things I can't pay for, then I pay for them," Lucas said simply. "Hannah, I'm not asking you to split everything 50-50. I'm asking you to share your life with me. If that means I cover more of the financial costs, that's okay. I make more money, so I'll contribute more money. You contribute other things, your time, your energy, your perspective. It doesn't have to be equal to be fair." "That doesn't seem right," Hannah said. "I don't want to be dependent on you." "You wouldn't be dependent, you'd be partners. There's a difference." Lucas squeezed her hand. "Look, I know this is complicated. I know every couple has to figure out their own balance when it comes to money. But Hannah, I don't care if you can never afford gallery openings or expensive dinners. I care that you're willing to try new things with me, that you're open to experiencing my world while I experience yours." Hannah looked at their joined hands, thinking about compromise and partnership, about the ways love required negotiation and trust. "I need to keep my independence, my house, my job, my ability to support myself. Those things matter to me." "I would never ask you to give them up," Lucas said, "but I also want to help when you'll let me. Want to fix that porch light and help fund programs for your students and make your life easier in the ways I can. Is there room for both? For you maintaining your independence while also letting me support you sometimes?" Hannah thought about it, about her fierce need for self-reliance and her growing understanding that accepting help didn't make her weak. "Maybe. We'll have to figure out the boundaries together." "We will," Lucas promised. "One conversation at a time." They left the gallery hand in hand, and Lucas drove Hannah back to her house instead of his apartment. He walked her to her door, the flickering porch light casting shadows across his face. "Thank you for tonight," Hannah said, "for introducing me to your friends, for not hiding me away." "I would never hide you," Lucas said. "I'm proud to be with you, Hannah. I want everyone to know it." She kissed him goodnight, a longer kiss this time, full of promise and heat and the suggestion of more to come. When she finally pulled away, both of them were breathing hard. "I should go inside," Hannah said, though she made no move to do so. "You should," Lucas agreed, his hand still on her waist. "Before the neighbors start gossiping." "Definitely." They kissed again and then again until finally Hannah forced herself to step back and unlock her door. "I'll call you tomorrow?" "I'll be waiting." Hannah watched him drive away before going inside, her heart full of hope and possibility. She changed into pajamas and curled up on her couch with a book, but she couldn't focus on the words. Her mind kept replaying the evening, the easy conversations with Lucas's friends, the way he'd looked at her like she was the most important person in the room, the growing certainty that they could actually make this work. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. They saw each other several times a week, alternating between Hannah's world and Lucas's. Some dates were simple: coffee at Maple Street Cafe, walks in the park, movie nights at Hannah's house with popcorn and terrible comedies. Others were more elaborate: dinners at restaurants Hannah would never have tried on her own, a weekend trip to wine country, a charity fundraiser where Hannah wore a dress Lucas had bought her after she'd mentioned having nothing appropriate for such events. She met Margaret for lunch and discovered where Lucas had gotten his quiet intensity and his fierce loyalty to the people he loved. Margaret was warm and funny, telling embarrassing stories about Lucas's childhood that made him blush and Hannah laugh until her sides hurt. Lucas came to one of Hannah's faculty meetings, sitting in the back and taking notes while she presented her grant proposal to the other teachers. Afterward, he offered suggestions so thoughtful and practical that Hannah found herself incorporating them into her implementation plan. They had their first real fight over something stupid, Hannah's car breaking down, and Lucas immediately offering to buy her a new one, Hannah insisting she could handle it herself, both of them getting frustrated and saying things they didn't mean. They worked through it, eventually compromising on Lucas lending Hannah his car, while hers was being repaired, Hannah paying him back by cooking dinner for a week. "This is normal," Lucas had said as they made up, holding each other on her couch. "This is what healthy couples do. They disagree, they work through it, they come out stronger on the other side." "I'm not used to healthy," Hannah admitted. "Me neither," Lucas said. "But I think we're figuring it out." Spring turned to early summer, and Hannah's literacy program began to take shape. She hired 2 teaching assistants, ordered hundreds of new books, designed a curriculum that met students where they were instead of where they were supposed to be. Lucas attended the program launch, standing in the back of the library while Hannah introduced the initiative to students and parents, his pride in her achievement written all over his face. One evening in late June, Lucas showed up at Hannah's house unannounced. She opened the door to find him holding a folder of papers, looking nervous in a way that made her heart skip. "Is everything okay?" she asked, letting him inside. "I need to show you something," Lucas said, "and I need you to be completely honest about how you feel." He handed her the folder. Inside were real estate listings, not for apartments or condos, but for houses. Small houses with yards and porches, big enough for 2 people but not ostentatious. The kind of homes that felt lived in rather than staged. "I'm putting my apartment on the market," Lucas said. "I hate it there, and I want something that actually feels like home. But Hannah, I'm not making this decision alone. I'm looking at places that could become our home, if that's something you'd want. Eventually. No pressure, no timeline, just the possibility." Hannah flipped through the listings, her throat tight with emotion. He wasn't asking her to move in with him tomorrow, or even soon. He was asking if she could see a future where they shared a life, a space, a home together. "Lucas," she said softly. "I know it's fast," he rushed on. "I know we're still rebuilding trust, still figuring things out, but I wanted you to know that when I think about my future, you're in it. And I wanted to include you in this decision, because whatever house I buy, I want it to be somewhere you'd be comfortable, somewhere you could see yourself living someday if things keep going the way they're going." Hannah set down the folder and took his face in her hands. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily, naturally, like they'd been waiting there all along. "I love you for asking, for including me, for thinking about our future instead of just yours." Lucas's expression transformed, hope and joy flooding his features. "You love me?" "I love you," Hannah confirmed. "I probably have for a while, but I was too scared to say it. Scared of being vulnerable, of giving you that power over me. But I'm tired of being scared. I love you, Lucas Gray. All of you, the CEO and the fence fixer, the wealthy philanthropist and the guy who burns toast. All of it." Lucas kissed her deeply, pulling her close. "I love you too," he said against her lips. "I love you so much it terrifies me. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you've made me want to be better. I love that you challenge me and support me and make me laugh. I love everything about you." They spent the rest of the evening looking through house listings together, talking about what they wanted in a home, in a future, in a life built together. Hannah found herself getting excited about crown molding and breakfast nooks, about yards big enough for a garden and rooms that could become a library. "Not right away," she said firmly as they looked at a particularly charming craftsman with a porch swing. "I'm not ready to give up my house yet. I need more time, need to be sure we can really make this work." "I know," Lucas said, "but when you are ready, whenever that is, I want us to choose together. I want this to be something we build as partners." Summer deepened into long golden days. Hannah's literacy program thrived, her students making progress that brought tears to her eyes. Lucas took time off from the foundation to help with the program's summer session, reading with struggling kids and seeing firsthand the impact his funding was making. They took a vacation together, a week at a cabin by a lake, no phones or work or obligations, just the 2 of them learning to be together without distractions. They hiked and swam and sat on the dock watching sunsets. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies and hearts with equal attention. They talked about their fears and dreams, their pasts and possible futures, building the foundation of trust that had cracked, but was slowly, surely, becoming stronger than before. One evening, sitting on the dock with their feet in the water, Hannah said, "I want you to know something. If you told me the truth that first night at the cafe, if you'd said I'm a millionaire CEO, I would have run. I would have been too intimidated, too convinced we couldn't work, too afraid of being hurt again." "I know," Lucas said quietly. "But that doesn't make what you did right," Hannah continued. "It just means we're both flawed humans trying to protect ourselves. You lied by omission because you were scared. I would have rejected you because I was scared. Neither of those things was fair to the other person." "So what do we do with that?" Lucas asked. "We forgive ourselves and each other," Hannah said. "We acknowledge that we both made mistakes, and we choose to do better going forward. We build something new that's stronger because we learned from what went wrong." Lucas pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Hannah felt something settle in her chest, a certainty she'd been searching for. "I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" "To look at houses with you, not to move in together tomorrow, but to seriously look, to plan for a future where we share a home and a life." She turned to face him. "I trust you, Lucas. I trust us. And I want to build something real with you." The smile that spread across Lucas's face was brighter than the sunset. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Hannah confirmed, laughing as he pulled her into his arms and kissed her soundly. They returned from the cabin to find their lives waiting. Hannah's students and Lucas's foundation, her small house and his tower apartment, the daily responsibilities and complications of two separate lives slowly braiding together into something shared. In September, they found a house. Not too big, not too small, with a porch and a yard and enough rooms that Hannah could have a home office and Lucas could have his library. It needed work, new paint, updated fixtures, some landscaping, but it had good bones and felt right in a way neither of them could quite articulate. "This is it," Hannah said, standing in the empty living room and seeing their future in the bare walls and dusty floors. "This is it," Lucas agreed, taking her hand. They didn't move in right away. Hannah kept her house for another 6 months while they renovated the new place, wanting to be absolutely sure before taking that final step. Lucas sold his apartment and moved into a temporary rental, both of them maintaining their independence while slowly, deliberately choosing to build something together. When they finally moved into the house the following spring, exactly 1 year after their reconciliation in the park, it felt like coming home. They painted walls and hung artwork, filled shelves with books, and the kitchen with mismatched dishes from both their previous lives. They planted a garden together, Hannah teaching Lucas about tomatoes and herbs, while he contributed more enthusiasm than actual skill. Margaret came for dinner on their first night in the house, bringing homemade pie and embarrassing photo albums. Rachel and her husband came too, and Marcus and Jennifer, and some of Hannah's teacher friends. They filled the house with laughter and warmth, christening the space with the people they loved. As Hannah stood in her new kitchen, watching Lucas tell a story that had everyone laughing, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. The pain and the doubt, the mistakes and the forgiveness, the slow, patient work of rebuilding trust, all of it had been worth it to reach this moment. Later that night, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up together, Lucas pulled Hannah into his arms. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy," Hannah said, meaning it completely. "Are you?" "I've never been happier in my life," Lucas said. "I have a home that actually feels like home. I have work that matters. And I have you, the most real, most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me." They stood in their kitchen, holding each other as the last light faded from the sky, and Hannah thought about the blind date that had started it all. How she'd almost said no to Rachel, almost let fear keep her from taking that chance. How Lucas had almost let his past dictate his future, almost let his secrets destroy something beautiful before it could fully bloom. But they'd both been brave when it mattered. They'd both chosen to try, to fight, to do the hard work of building something real. And now they had this, a home, a love, a future that was theirs to create together. "I love you," Hannah whispered. "I love you too," Lucas said. "Always." And in the house they'd chosen together, in the life they were building day by day, those words felt like the truest thing either of them had ever said. Not a promise of perfection, but a commitment to keep showing up, keep being honest, keep choosing each other even when it was hard. That was enough. That was everything. Outside, the porch light, new and steady, no longer flickering, cast a warm glow across their yard. Inside, two people who'd been brave enough to try again settled into their evening, their home, their hard-won happiness. The story that had begun with secrets and fear had transformed into something built on truth and trust. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy, but it was real, and it was theirs, and that made all the difference.